Hey there, SMITE fans, and welcome in to the SPL Aggro here to kick it off for you. And what's going to be a huge day, and of course, we couldn't do all the things we're going to do today without the support of Alienware, so make sure you guys check them out. You can also head over to smitegame.com/alienware and make sure you're using code SMITEAW, as again, we are the SPL powered by Alienware. As I just mentioned, it's a big day. We've got two sets ahead of us. We're going to be kicking it off with the Scarabs and the Leviathans. But after it's all said and done today, we are drafting our SPL groups. If you want more information on the SPL format and the changes that we've made, you can head on over to smiteproleague.com in order to find the information there. But we're going with a draft format here later on today, so make sure you guys are sticking around long term as we've got Mifflin joining me now. Miff, this is a big set for the Leviathans because they can lock in that first seed, make sure that they're going to be one of those teams drafting, and stop the momentum of the Solar Scarabs.
Look, you said can lock in that first seed. I'm going to take it a step further. I'll raise you, Aggro. I'm going to say should be able to lock in that first seed. Sure, the Scarabs have been looking pretty good. They're coming off a heater up against the Dragons, but the Leviathans have been the pinnacle of consistency here in Season 8, and I don't expect that to change.
That's why they are sitting up top alone at 5-1. These are your current standings coming into today, and they are accurate. Jade Dragons are the second seed for right now. The Olympus Bolts, despite being able to get to 5-2, would then be lower on. They would still be fourth based on the plus minus in the tiebreakers. So the way the tiebreakers work, it goes head-to-head. Jade Dragons, Camelot Kings, and Bolts are in a three-way tie there as Dragons beat Kings, Kings beat Bolts, Bolts beat Dragons, and then it goes to the plus-minus. Now, yeah, keep up, Mifflin. Here you go. Now it goes to plus-minus. Both Dragons and Kings are at +7. Even if the Bolts 2-0 today, they would be at +5. So then it's just Dragons and Kings, and it goes back to head-to-head, and if you were taking notes, which you should have been, it'd be Dragons over Kings, so that's why the Dragons are currently your second seed. Now, what happens if the Leviathans lose? I don't know. I haven't done the math so far.
If they get 2-0'd,
I'm not going there, okay? I'm not doing it, so quit asking. Instead, we're just going to look at what's going to happen in this set itself. Look, the Leviathans have looked so good, and for me, Miff, it's really been centered around how well their duo lane has been playing. Yarkor and Rongyu have really looked solid over there on the left side of the map.
I can be quoted as saying about Rongyu in the past, I don't want to see anyone else play Ymir. This guy has elevated that pick so far beyond just what the god is capable of that, and thank God it's actually a Ymir clip here. This was not planned, chat. That I don't care that anyone else can play it incredibly well. PBM can lock in Ymir. I don't care. I don't want to see it because I know that Rongyu is going to do it at a later date, potentially even better. This guy in particular has initiated maybe 80% of the fights that the Leviathans have taken, and of those 80%, I'd say they've got a 100% win rate. That's how strong the front line is for this roster.
He's just looked so consistent for this team and really been locked in the entire season so far. Panatom has been very aggressive, as we expect from him. You know that Shinto is going to do Shinto stuff over there in the mid lane, but when Rongyu looks this dynamic, I don't know. I think Leviathans really are the team to beat right now in the SPL. A lot of it is due to the support and the new ADC for this Leviathans team. Yarkor as well has looked very, very comfortable there.
He has. Yarkor said it in an interview earlier this year. Hey, we need to play any role. Doesn't matter. I'm a mechanical god. I'm going to play any role at the highest level. And so far, he's done a very good job of it. And he is one of the most aggressive Hunter players that we've got full stop inside the league. I mean, he's jumping in every single wave, every single time he gets the opportunity. If the cooldown's up and his god is capable of it, he is leaping at the opposition.
Well, on the other side, for the Solar Scarabs, their duo lane is on the rise as well, but I feel like they are in a position with a little bit more to prove. Zapman, of course, over there alongside Inbound. And Inbound, in particular, you look at the way the Scarabs have been playing, you look at that victory over the Jade Dragons, I think it's fair to point at Inbound's raised level of play as a huge factor for their recent success.
Back in Season 7, Inbound was hailed as the most improved player week by week, and now we're starting to see the fruits of his efforts. The mechanical prowess, as well as his ability to initiate fights, is looking much improved here in Season 8, and I really do like this newfound confidence I've seen from him inside the duo lane. He plays much more aggressively with Zapman than we saw back in Season 7 with Wowie, but that does come as a double-edged sword. Inbound is still prone to get a little bit over-aggressive at times. So if he's able to rein that in, I think he's going to be in contention for one of the top spots in support.
And this, of course, this whole team in general is one that is really on the rise. Baronic has looked so much better as of late. Layers has really started to make an impact, and SOT has been a star player for this squad. It feels like the Scarabs have been a little bit more solo lane focused as of late, but I don't know if they're going to get the opportunity to play that way up against Leviathans, who like to play around that duo lane. Well, we can ask the Scarabs what their plans are, although I don't think Bobby's going to tell us. We've got Inbound joining us here for the pregame interview. Bobby, a bit of a unfortunate timing here for the break for you guys, because the Jade Dragons, that victory over them, that was such a big momentum builder. Do you think that momentum carries over to your game today up against the Leviathans?
I mean, yeah, I still think it does a little bit, like, because we carried that over into scrims, and then scrims will carry over into this. So I think, yeah, we'll still carry over a little bit of it.
All right, Bobby. I got to ask Baronic last time I was given interview privileges, and I was told that I likely wouldn't get them again. But I'm going to ask you anyway. How's that console experience been treating you, man? Is it kind of feeling a little bit more real now that you've got your console boys at your side, inside Layers and Baronic? Is it transitioned you well into the SPL? Just how was it as a primer?
I mean, I think it was like a decent start, but it made some things a little bit harder because I think we played a lot different SMITE on console, so it made it a little bit just weirder to get into get into like SPL. But yeah, it feels nice playing back with the boys again, the console boys.
Bobby, right before you had us join you, we were talking about Rongu and Yarkor, this duo lane for the Leviathans. They've looked so solid. What have you seen from them so far this year?
I mean, Ronnie's a beast. I thought Ronnie was a beast last year, and he's played like one of the best supports this year. And I think he's like the big thing. He made Yarkor feel like super comfortable just getting into the role. And like I think a lot of props have to be given to Ronnie to that team, because he made that transition for Yarkor just that much easier. And now Yarkor is just taking it and run with it. And now he just seems super comfortable also. And he just kind of like, it was really quick too. I didn't expect it to be that quick, but he's looking really good now too.
They've been looking really good, but I'm sure you guys are going to be ready for him. Bobby, good luck in your matches today.
Thank you.
Appreciate the time, of course, from the support for the Solar Scarabs. We'll be getting into picks and bans pretty shortly here. Miff, I really think that when I'm looking at the Solar Scarabs team and what they've started to do well during their successes, I do think it's really been more centered around playing around the side lanes, and in particular, that right side of the map. SOT has really pushed his leads pretty well as of late.
Side lanes and early game aggression is the name of the game for the Solar Scarabs, and I think you're right to highlight solo lane in particular. It feels like to me that Layers is kind of bringing that console identity, that old 2-1-2 meta that we used to have on the box, over here into PC. He plays inside of the solo lane more so than I'd say just about any other jungler in the SPL right now, and SOT has been benefiting for it. But up against this aggressive duo lane that the Leviathans have, I'm not sure that we're going to get to see that same level of pressure allocated to the solo. Maybe we're going to need to see Layers try and move his way over into the duo lane.
I think you're right to highlight the pressure from the Leviathans, because they've really turned up the gas as of late. They've really put the pedal to the metal in the early game in comparison to what we saw from them in Season 7. And Panatom, for all the time that Layers is spending over in solo, it feels like Panatom is spending equal time, if not more, over in duo.
And that's the kind of the dichotomy of junglers right now. It's where do you want to spend your time? And it feels like those are the only two places we see. Back in Season 7, it was essentially a 1-3-1 meta where the jungler and support would just hang out inside mid for the first 15 or so minutes of the game. But now, in Season 8, it's a little bit more of an expression of identity. Where does your jungler want to play? Guys like Panatom, as you already highlighted, really like playing around that duo lane. Twig does the exact same thing, but I would say that in Season 8, these dual lane-centric junglers have been seeing just a little bit more success. It's so much easier with the longer lanes to put a hunter behind and then keep them behind.
And that's been the game plan a lot of times for the Leviathans, making sure that Yarkor gets ahead and stays ahead in his lane. So we take a look at the players getting locked in and ready to go for our first matchup here today. The Solar Scarabs are a team that when we're talking about the draft format that we're going to have later on today, drafting your groups, remember that teams are drafting the other side's group. So you can kind of build a difficult group for them to get through. And I think the Scarabs, if they were to come out today and look really strong, maybe even find a set victory, that's going to change the way that the drafting happens later on.
Yeah, if the Scarabs beat the Leviathans, that'll put them as 3-set victories up against the Jade Dragons, the Leviathans, and then also the Valkyries. Kind of a crazy world to think about, and it really will shift up how these teams are going to approach them as a threat level. I'd say if the Scarabs do win today, I'd have them solidly middle of the pack coming off this heater. So it could shift up how they do approach that phase, but talking about consistency and all that stuff, you got to bring in effect the Zapman's Lanimal instinct once he does get into these phase playoffs and things like that. I'm expecting the Scarabs to go up a tier as well, just in that regard.
I think so too. I think that's a good point. That and even the rookies have a lot of LAN experience. Inbound, not the rookie, of course, but Layers and Baronic have played at a ton of console LANs and have really gotten more comfortable there. Layers, back when he first started in the SCL, did have some struggles at LAN. I think that environment did get to him a little bit, but got to a point where he was one of the more consistent players in the console league once it came to those big events. So I don't think that should be too much of a concern for the Solar Scarabs team. On the other side, I do want to take a look. If we're talking so much about Solar Patrol and this right side of the map for the Scarabs, what has been your assessment so far of the Leviathans rookie Julio in the solo lane?
Dude's looking so good. He's looking comfortable over there. And you've already highlighted that Panatom doesn't really head over to the solo lane too often. And I think that's a byproduct of the trust that the Leviathans have in their solo laner to withstand pressure whenever they need to. Julio can sit over there on the tier and just sustain up in lane and rotate out at level 16 and make his presence known, or he'll play something else and just hang out. He's kind of the best role player, almost reminiscent of what we've seen from Benji in the past on this team, and it facilitates the rest of the Leviathans to play the game however they see fit. If they want to make sure Shinto is getting solo farmed the entire time, so Panatom has to just soak up the jungle farm, well, someone's going to have to miss out a little bit. Generally, that's Julio, and it hasn't really negatively affected them as of yet.
Of course, we're just waiting for these players to get into the picks and bans, so just waiting on them to do that. But right in the meantime, you can head on over to shop.smiteproleague.com as you can get these jerseys and look just as good as the players. Look, Bobby's looking great in his jersey, and let's be real. I'm sure it has nothing to do with all of the hard work that he's put into working out and everything like that, and it is entirely attributed to this Inside Apparel's jersey. So you too can look very good by, again, going to shop.smiteproleague.com and get your hands on your favorite team's gear. These teams, I think that with the changes that we've seen, we got our first peek at a lot of the different changes to the SPL meta yesterday. I think the thing that stood out to me, Mifflin, was that it seemed kind of Hunter-specific on what types of builds players wanted to go. Vote was still going Ornate Arrow and trying to go for that typical crit build. Vote also got his purple camped really hard, so it didn't really look particularly good. Tough to say exactly what we'll see, but I guess we can leave that discussion for the casters as we are in to picks and bans Leviathans in that first pick position. But remember, Gilgamesh is available, and Johnny played it every game yesterday. Didn't find the most success on it, but had a pretty tough matchup.
Not only is Gilgamesh available, but auto-attack junglers in general have seen a bit of a resurgence. Mercury's back, Gilgamesh got some play, and I think that's due in large part to the Shell adjustment. I'm not going to say directly it is a nerf, but I think most people would say that it is. No longer does it take away those auto stacks, And now, when you have the Hell Shield, auto attacks now deal 50% damage to you, as long as you have a little bit of that shielding instead of just the block stacks afforded by it in a couple patches ago. I think that this means that we're going to see a huge shift in what's available in the jungle. Erlang Shen could very easily come back. Da Ji, I think, is going to be a lot easier to execute on as well. I'm very excited to see where the junglers decide to go in this set.
And if I remember correctly, Panatom was playing Da Ji before the shell change even went live. So that would be a god to watch out for here for the Leviathans. And the Leviathans are the team that everyone talks about as sticking to the meta. They want to play the same 2 or 3 gods, being somewhat predictable in those picks and bans. I think last year we saw them get off to such a hot start. They really had a good understanding of the meta. The meta shifts in that kind of stuff, it tended to take them a little bit longer at times. And I think that this is the first big meta shift of Season 8. So I'm excited to see how quickly they're able to adjust as they're staying right at home with their first pick. No changes necessary here. Sobek first overall.
And this is a conversation that we've had in the past, Agro. I think we agreed that Sobek might be one of the most meta-resistant gods. No matter how he's shifted, no matter how the meta changes throughout the years, Sobek has been largely present in the game, at least at the highest level, because of the consistency that he brings. His kit is just that good. The peel potential of Tail Whip, Pluck as an initiation tool, the CC immunity from his ultimate makes it so easy to execute on his god, and he doesn't really have any bad counter matchups, which is why we see these teams take him first overall so often.
Xingqian and Anher on the other side. Anher receiving a nerf, but again, seems pretty resilient to it. Is a pretty early Xingqian lock in here, Miff. I mean, Sobek's on the other side. It's not like you have to worry about Leviathans necessarily taking this pick away from inbound. Maybe just a wait and see sort of situation.
Yeah, I think Inbound just had a very good performance on it within that Jade Dragon set, so they want to make sure that he's comfortable early on, and this will allow the Solar Scarabs, if they want to just look for a little bit more counter picks, make it easier for the mid laner to make his decision, or the jungler himself. So I don't hate this pick, but you're right to say that Xingqian's not going to be contested here. There's a very low chance that the Leviathans are going to be able to take that one away, so they could have gone towards the meta a little bit more so.
Chiron locked in early here. We saw Chiron get played yesterday by Panda Cat in particular, who looked very good on it. This pick starting to get a lot more value. That knock-up immunity while channeling the dash ends up being pretty important against, oh yeah, Xingqian and Anher, two gods who knock you up all the time. I think this pick looks perfect here for the Leviathans.
And Chiron has adjusted very well to the new Hunter builds. If you want to go for that Bluestone Transcendent start, well, Chiron's ultimate hits incredibly hard from very far away. By the way, also gives you death immunity and will revive you if you are able to get a last hit onto any enemy god. So I think Chiron is a god that is going to be within the meta for a fair bit going forward in the future. But so far, I really do like this Scarabs draft. It's decent CC lockdown. Xingqian's ultimate as a beads burning tool, so Scylla and Anher should be able to find their own CC relatively easily. And if any CC is found, well, I'm a Monster is going to blow just about anyone up pretty quickly. It's a very standard draft so far from the Scarabs, but it's going to perform very easily and well.
Yeah, I like it quite a bit. Getting Baronic one of his gods that he's comfortable on pretty early on in this draft as the Leviathans opened the picks and bans with a respect ban towards his Giannis, so making sure that he doesn't get target banned again makes some sense. As Shinto is going to be on the receiving end of those target bans, Merlin and Ra, the two take it away from him, as it looks like Solar Troll is the focus for the Leviathans, kind of letting Layers get what he wants potentially in this jungle. Set still open, Tsukiyomi still open. I mean, these gods that really dominated the jungle in the first part of the year left up the chance here by both sides.
Yeah, it seems like neither team really putting too much emphasis on the jungle. And if I were to reach into the crystal ball and try and guess where the Leviathans go, Daji has a pretty decent lineup here for the Leviathans. If Panatom wants to go towards that pick, going to be able to very easily deal your damage to both Scylla and Anher, likely going to be able to win those 1v1s in the late game, and just additional beads burning or ult burning tools could make it a little bit easier for the Leviathans to perform inside the team fight. Instead though, the Solar Scarabs are keeping their eyes towards the Soul lane, going to wait even longer on that jungle selection. Sun Wukong locked in. That's a lot of safety out of the solo. Might see both short lanes just left alone on an island.
Yeah, I think that might be the case. Is Leviathan's hovering Persephone? I think that's just wishful thinking. Persephone not competitively allowed since the rework quite yet. But you know Shinto was a specialist for the first version of Persephone. I anticipate it'll be much of the same for the second. But he'll settle for a different goddess, and that's the Morrigan. This is not a pick that I think of often when it comes to Shinto, but I don't see why it wouldn't fit with his playstyle. Wants to farm up a little bit, farms the jungle particularly well, and allows him to fight on his cooldowns very, very effectively.
But when I think of Shinto, I think of that long-range artillery damage playstyle. Thoth, the OG Persephone, that style of play. The Morrigan's a god that has to get kind of down and dirty a little bit, has to get into the backline herself, utilize that stealth to get in towards Anher or Scylla, and then that leaves you so exposed. It's going to be a slight shift in identity for the Leviathan's mid laner, but it can certainly work out. I mean, the Morrigan is literally every god in the game, and Shinto plays probably more Smite than just about anyone else in the game.
Yeah, he's definitely grinding out there. So it is the Morrigan and then the Awilish pick for Panatom. We've seen him on this basically all year. And you look at what they have on the other side, Xingqian, Anher, Scylla. That's three gods that are already susceptible to that ultimate. And then you look at the knockups the Leviathans have. They've got a Sobek and a Cucullin. You basically have your pick of the litter when it comes to these targets for that gravity surge.
Yeah, all the beads on the Solar Scarabs are going to be under threat throughout the entirety of this match. I mean, Blink Forward, Tail Whip, Gravity Surge is just OG Smite. Very easy to set up on here. But I want to highlight the Solar Scarabs' final pick. Erlang Shen locked in, likely going into the jungle. This is something that Layers has had a lot of experience playing, not only at the SEC level, but he played it over in the SCL as well. And now that Shell has been nerfed, these auto-attack junglers are slowly starting to work their way back into the meta. Erlang Shen is a guy that has to get involved early on, but he's got some pretty easy priority targets throughout the first 10 or so minutes of this game. This Morgan, going to be very easy to exploit if he's able to work his way in towards her, or even early game fights pre-level 7, should be able to win the 1v1 if he's able to isolate Panatom in the jungle.
This is definitely a god that can snowball the game out of control, but I'm looking at what the Scarabs have, Mifflin. It's setup, 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 all for this backline. And then you look at this Chiron on the other side, and all of the setup is pretty telegraphed. Xingqian ultimate is one of the easiest ults to cleanse in the entire game. Pretty easy to cleanse an Erlong pin as well, and he, of course, he's going to pin into ult. You cleanse right as they get pinned. A lot of times you end up immuning his follow-up CC. I feel like this is going to be the Yark show here. Just letting him get that cleanse off and then put out the damage on the back end should be pretty successful for the Leviathans.
Should be. So the Leviathans are going to have to make sure that Yarkor is able to stay safe. If I'm on the side of the Solar Scarabs, I've identified exactly what you've highlighted already, and I'm saying to myself, well, if I 9 turns Blessing anyone that isn't Yarkor, well, they're going to get cleansed. So we might as well make sure we're diving on a Yarkor first. But it's not that easy to shut down a Chiron. We talked about it earlier on, but that ultimate does afford him a brief respite, a little bit of death immunity coming through, and if he gets a last hit, a revive as well. So the Leviathan strategy is to wait till the late game, utilize that cleanse, and then play around a team fight phase. Well, that's just vintage Leviathans, isn't it? So the Scarabs going to be fighting an uphill battle.
Yeah, the more I think about this comp, Miff, the more I feel like the Leviathans have just kind of checkmated the Scarabs potentially in picks and bans, because you look at what the Scarabs have to do. You're right, they have to get on Yarkor. All right, let's blink on that guy. Well, if you don't have blink, then the front to back of the Leviathans, you're gonna blink in, and if you don't have beads as a frontliner, you get Sobek knocked up into a Willix pulled to Timbuktu. You're nowhere near Yarkor anymore, and you just get one-shot by it. I really like the way the Leviathans can play. It's just a matter of how effective Shinto is going to be, because I think you're right to highlight, if Shinto's on Thoth or Ra, these traditional long-range mages, it might be a little bit easier for him to be in the right positions in these team fights.
Completely agree, but aggro, the Solar Scarabs are an early game specialist team. It's one of the best phases of the game for them, and they've got a draft that should be able to establish pressure pretty easily on her. One of the most aggressive long lane hunters in the game, should be able to get pressure in the duo, and then Erlang Shen can absolutely blow a match out of the water.
Let's see what happens. Leviathans up against the Scarabs. Throw it down for the casters for game number 1.
Thanks so much, Aggro and Mifflin on the desk. I'm Hindu Man, and joining me today is going to be Gormizer, as well as the one, the only Dog on Spectator, the NA cameraman of old. Into the game we go, Gore, and honestly, my attention is going to turn to the duo lane, because I'm expecting a scrap there between these two.
Yeah, there's so much to pay attention to. First off, I mean, Chiron, who kind of came out of nowhere, at least to me, yesterday, all of a sudden kind of jumps into the things and was very well handled by PandaCat here for Yarkor. It's going to be interesting how he handles that man. And the duo lane for the Scarabs is the next thing that comes to my mind immediately, because Zapman is 0 for 5. Every single game he has played is on her so far this year. He has lost, which is not a good sign. But to counter that out, every game that Inbound has played as Xingqian, they've won. So there's a weird balance that's going to be coming in here in the duo lane, definitely conflicting it. And it's actually that Xingqian that I think stands out to me more than necessarily the on her, because we've seen, look, Zep's been playing older than the game itself has existed almost, and that really does mean that I trust him to be able to play on her. Yeah, it hasn't necessarily been the best pick for him this year, but I don't think that's anything to write off. The Xingqian, though, specifically with that Furious Roar early on, is going to help shut down this Chiron. I'm really interested to see what Yarkor does in terms of his build, because up at the beginning, 20% damage reduction on basic attack damage that is going to be dealt to Yarkor. As he levels up that Furious Roar, it gets up to 50% damage reduction. Like, that's an upgraded shell in an ability that you're going to be able to have if you just shout onto Yarkor, and I think that's going to give them a lot of opportunity.
Well, you saw the start. I was going to mention how the Scarabs started this game to try and relieve some of this pressure of this Chiron early game, but a blink and a pluck coming out from Rongyu has set up for Inbound to definitely die here eventually. The question is, who does he give first blood to? It's going to go to Panitom. The assist goes the way as well of Yakor and Rongyu. Perfect start there for Leviathans. And did you notice, Go? We saw Scarabs actually send layers to the red buff at the start there to try and speed through the clear of Zap and Inbound to get to lane quicker and make sure they didn't get themselves in an awkward spot against that level 2 of Yakor. And it still didn't help him. Rongyu stepped up, hits that blink, hits that pluck, and it's game over.
Yeah, now you've got Yarkor at level 3. Zapman just ticked over there, so he's not necessarily falling too far behind. Same thing for Inbound, just ticked over to level 2. But a little bit of experience goes a long way. I will say, though, and this is just memory for it, the last set the Scarabs had up against the Dragons, there was a lot of focus on the Inbound. I think it was in game number 3. The Dragons killed him like 3 or 4 times at the very beginning, and it meant literally nothing 10 minutes into the game. He was still pretty much on par for level. It didn't necessarily impact the way he was able to get aggressive. So if they can keep it going maybe that way, like if the Scarabs are going to fall behind, ideally, as much as it sucks for Inbound, he's the one getting killed as opposed to Zapman or as opposed to Baronic. And that's kind of where things I think are going to stand. He's really been solid at keeping up with this farm, the way they've played. I'm really excited to see how the Scarabs can continue that adjustment. Right? I don't want that to be a one-off against the Dragons, that they just had a really good day. I think they have a lot of that potential in them. But they had said it on the desk. I think you had mentioned it earlier while we were talking about it. This is the team to beat, and it's going to be very difficult to take down something like the Leviathans.
But a panic station's coming through there and save from the side of Scarabs as the pluck does connect onto Zapman. Follow-up damage is there from Jarkor 2 and the dash through. And Zap doesn't have his leap available, remember. Even with the beads, he won't get away. And another kill now for Leviathans, who are taking it to the Scarabs in the duo lane. And all the while, Scarabs, meanwhile, have been focusing their attention towards that solo lane a little bit more. We saw Layers go for an invade and strip away the blue, but you can see the damage is really starting to hurt already for Leviathans in that duo.
It's a big threat, I think, overall, and maybe it's something that's going to end up hurting them. I mean, they had mentioned it on the desk. There's a lot of setup. Erlong Shin, Sun Wukong, as well as Inbound on the Xing Qian, all of it is setup to me. That is going to be either channeled through Zapman, which unfortunately right now Inbound gets plugged back in. Get out of here!
Snipes! Oh, he can't get out. He's only level 3, the poor lad. Back to Big Sugar again. And the Leviathans duo, and I will argue with a lot of people on this point, but I actually do believe already this is probably the strongest duo lane in the SPL, is this the Leviathans comp. I think they are really up there competing with Panda and Mike, and I think that's where a lot of fans will believe straight away at the top 2. But these two, for me, Yarkor's transition to this duo lane has been so easy for him. Way easier than I expected.
And the thing that's been insane to me is following exactly that sentiment, right? I expected Yarkor to be all right? Like, I mean, you're coming in, like, he played solo. Typically, like, when you look at the solo laners, they've got a insanely wide god pool, and their mechanics are usually really high. So, yeah, you can typically play a lot of the gods in the game at a high level. In fact, some of them do it for fun on their stream, as right now it's looking like they're going for a gank.
And Layers under pressure as well. Will get feather stepped and killed, but Panitom did get low, and Inbound not available in time to get over here to stop. This was Scarabs getting aggressive there again at this blue buff. This time, though, Leviathan stood a bit taller. Julio combining with Panitom beautifully, and now, well, Solo Troll's forced to use the Somersault Cloud to get away back to the safety of his tower as Leviathans pull further ahead in terms of kills.
That's scary to me. Layers is the one that I think I'd be relying on a little early on. Him and Baronic are going to be a really big combo, and I think trying to get one of the two ahead is going to be helpful. So far, it's not working so well in the jungle, so I think they're going to have to start channeling a little bit more into that mid lane, especially because I looked this up. Shinto played Morrigan twice last year, 2 times across an entire year. So this is the 3rd time he's played Morrigan in the SPL. It's not something they go to often. He won once with it, lost once with it, so it's not really like we have a huge data pool for how well it's going to perform here. But that does give a lot of opening, I think, to Baronic to be the carry they need.
That's very, very true indeed, and you can see how this one plays out. I mean, I'm kind of interested to see exactly how this develops as the game gets later, because you're seeing Scarabs here, they focus a bit of their attention to the right-hand side of the map, realizing they're losing duo, but after that little tumble on the right-hand side, I'm a little bit worried Scarabs might get a little bit stuck in their mind of just falling back. The problem is just look at the ward coverage, the amount of blue lights across the map of these wards. There's very good vision from Leviathans right now, just tracking wherever they can be, and even though they're trying to pick Morrigan in mid lane right now. She escapes. Where Zapman, different story. Can't escape the third needle coming out from your core. And this is getting away from the Scarabs quickly.
Just what a shot. Like that, look, it's not an easy ability to juke. It's also not an easy ability to hit, right? It's one of those weird Chiron ults that just kind of falls into that odd category of if you've got the field down, you've got the field down. And being able to track that shot the way he did, pretty much max range there on the Zap, is such a huge deal for them. And it's creating so much opportunity across the map.
Oh! And it really is, as you were saying. I mean, Panitom doesn't have to worry about duo lane when they're 2v2ing and doing well on their own. They don't need help. So what does Panitom get to do? Hey, Shinto, keep taking all that farm mid. I ain't going to share with you. I'm going to sit in the solo lane with Julio, and we're just going to make sure Solo or Troll doesn't have a good day either. And in fairness, I mean, Solo or Troll hasn't really done anything wrong in this laning phase so far. He's just been focused out by jungle ganks and good rotations.
Like you said, there's not much you can do. Panatom's had his chair on this side of the map. I mean, I think I see a fire, some marshmallows over there in the fire giant pit. Like, he is very comfortable. As soon enough, he's going to be able to relax. He's going to have a full, like, 3-course meal on this side because he's just been relaxing on top of the solo lane. Like you said, if he has to, he'll make a peek over into mid, but he hasn't really had to transition to the left side of the map, period, unless maybe for a couple of experience camps, things like that. But for the most part, he is leaving this duo lane to themselves. He rotated early for that first blood to help kill off inbound, and since then, he hasn't necessarily been necessary for them. And this is where things get really awkward. Zapman's at a level deficit, not necessarily too much to come back from, but it's really where I start to worry about the gold, right? He's got about 850, a little bit over, in his pockets. There's 2,000 sitting in Chiron's pockets, and so Yarkor is going to be able to go back, get that Transcendence online pretty soon, and he'll feel pretty confident. And that's with the Ornate Arrow there for Zapman. He's getting free gold from what he's doing, and yet is still having a little bit of struggles keeping up. I think this is going to be a big point of contention. If the items get too out of hand there, I mean, Yarkor's already up 3-0-1. It'll continue going that way.
Block on Zapman, beads used, unfortunately the worst time, and that says some Panitom to come back to me, Zap.
No.
I'll take you down for another kill. I was about to say we saw Layers fall a little bit behind in experience as well. He came to duo looking for a gank, but the ward coverage from Leviathans just keeping full vision of all these rotations, and they are punishing and picking apart the Scarabs where they don't want to be. And now, well, attention turns to Midgore, because guess what? He's the only person that's not died on the Scarabs yet. I think Baronic's now the one with a target on his back.
I mean, there's one person, like you said, they haven't bullied this entire time. Scylla is a lot harder, I think, to lock down, though. Sentinel's really good at getting you away. Even if like you throw it out, then you get plucked, you can still go to your Sentinel. Beads is still available. But no, this is not. This is going to be dirty if they get the pluck.
You had a feeling, blink, pluck, in towards the feather step, and there's Jakor, 3 members just take down Zap. That's a rank game for you. 100% I've seen that on his stream a few times for poor old Zap. But hey, annihilate the Hunter, go to the Gold Fury soon after. What can Scarabs do to get back in it? It's kind of crazy that we're 9 minutes in, and I'm already thinking, well, you know, they do have a Scylla, Gore. We're hoping for the late game, you know, but I don't even think we're going to get there at this rate.
I mean, they need to, like you said, kind of dig their heels in and start fighting back somewhere. The problem is and what we've been seeing from teams like the Valkyries, the Scarabs, in positions like this, is going for those Hail Mary plays, right? Like looking for a Fire Giant when you know the other team's doing something kind of devastating, but still controllable on the other side of the map, or trying to force them into a fight where they aren't necessarily comfortable for it. You're not comfortable either, but you're trying to make them as uncomfortable
they're killing
as possible.
Him again. They're on him again. They're looking for him again, and they're going to get him on the left-hand side. You're Corin wrong you one more time. Zap will be tilted off the face of the earth at this moment in time, and wrong you laughing away at how much pain they're causing Scarabs at the moment. I can understand it. Good call from Scarabs, though. Straight over towards this Pyromancer, trying to get a global. They did lose a gold, obviously, but finding something on the map, at least, is a good thing to keep trying to farm for.
It's a good trade for them, at least in terms of, like you said, of gold. Like, you lose the Gold Fury, it's not going to necessarily make up for that deficit, but you are already at a pretty big deficit. Anything that you can get back at this point is going to be positive for you, especially because you're about to lose your left-hand Tier 1 tower there for Zap. Oof. And so that's the best thing I could argue for the Scarabs right now, and that is that you're down 9-0, but like you said, it's a late-game composition, works better as time goes on. We're 11 minutes in. They've only lost a single tower. The map state doesn't necessarily mean anything bad for the Scarabs. The Leviathans have been controlling everything and really dictating the pace, but then I look down at the levels, a 1-level lead for solo and jungle, 2 levels in mid, 2 levels for support, and then 3 levels there for Yarkor. it's manageable. It's not comfortable. You're not happy with it, but it is something that you can come back from if they are able to kind of coalesce into this good team fight phase. And now that Baranik's 12, I think if he can get involved in these fights and there's a little more 3-on-3 to their engagements, the Scarabs aren't really out of this just yet. They're just down by 9 kills, and that's something that you can just completely wipe off the board in a few minutes.
Yeah, I mean, well, in fairness, Gorin, it's the duo lane that's so far behind from Scarabs right now that they're just out of the fray. However, like you said, the middle to right-hand side of the map, they can fight. The problem is Leviathans are just playing with confidence now, and it's layers getting picked apart in the jungle by 4 members of Leviathans. The ward coverage just isn't good enough from Scarabs now to compete with this invasion the Leviathans had. They kill layers, they take his camp, they take the blue away from Solo or Troll too, and so the devastation that started in the duo lane is starting to spread across the map like some sort of awful infection.
It's the true struggle, right? I mean, you're down 5,000 gold. How much, like, you need wards, but can you really afford the wards that you need to try and combat this? I mean, they're roaming as a 4-man at this point. It feels like it's going to be difficult, but I see a sentry ward as well as a couple wards picked up there for inbound, so he's going to be able to throw up a little bit of vision. Probably on the right-hand side of the map. It feels like layers right now, SOT, are the ones that you want to put a little more pressure on. Primal Fury is going to be coming up in a couple of minutes, so there is a little bit warranting here, and they're going to be looking for the gank this time.
Yeah, a bit aggressive from Leviathans here. They do have to fall back. Desert Fury came through from Zap there, but Baranik took a chunk of damage from Yorko at the same time, who has that Transcendence online, more than likely going into the Assy next. I'll be real, Gore. I think we're going to start seeing Chiron's banned sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
We saw good performance out of him yesterday, and again so far already, just with Yorko's game here. I don't think Chiron's going to get through too much more often, or people are just going to throw away games, in my opinion.
Well, so far, yeah, it seems to be very, very successful at what he's doing. Again, and it's a different style of play. I think I said this yesterday on the desk, but just from what I'm used to seeing out of Chiron in the past and what we're getting to see just these last 2 days, it is a different version of Chiron, even though the only thing that changed was in knock-up immunity. Now it's given them a lot of credence to get aggressive and really, you can see with Yarkor, control the lane and allow Panatom to sit over here and continually fight. But Baranik's finally coming through a rotation. This could be a good chance to counter-gank the Leviathans.
But do they have it warded? Can Panatom spot it? Not in time to not get hit by Crush, but Featherstep's good. Can she get away? No, Wheelix is the question. And he will get away from Inbound, who was looking for the route. I'm a Monster will not connect on the right-hand side to Julio. And now it's Inbound who went too far forward here, trying to cause a problem, looking to keep up a kill. But Shito, with the transformation into his dual lane, Padre ends up getting the kill. And Bobby falls down a 3rd time.
This is just not going to be the kind of turnaround you need. I mean, you get Panatom on the brink of death. There's a moment there where Baranik potentially has the chance to lock him down. Not a guaranteed hit, but of course didn't end up hitting with the Yama monsters we saw anyway. Hindsight's 20/20, right? So maybe he goes for that if he knows that it's not going to necessarily create a lot of opportunities otherwise. But it is upsetting because you not only get a kill that should have been yours dropped, but now all of a sudden it's turned around right back in its favor. I will say the best thing for the Scarabs right now is that the gold deficit has been static for the last few minutes at 5,000 gold. This is something they did last week, or not last week, last time as well, which is that yes, you've fallen behind, but you've been able to keep it at a pretty steady line. This Primal Fury is going to change that, but if you can pick up what is going to be a Pyromancer respawning in just a second, maybe even go for a Fire Giant soon, which 15 minutes feels like a really risky play, but right now you need a little bit of risk. I don't know. And it feels like they're in a good spot to at least continue fighting back, even though things are still not really in their control.
It's going to start with wards, though, for me. Big ward placements across the map. Watch these rotations. You just saw Doug highlight over one there on that left-hand side, just keeping Zap relatively safe as best as he can be. At the same time, he's not just dealing with Chiron and Sobek, though. It's also this Wheelix, which is great against people that have leaps. And guess what? Anher's got a leap, so he's just going to have to turtle under his tower as long as he can and just kind of hope the rest of his team can tread water on the rest of the map. Leviathans, though, not treading water. They get that Fury, go straight towards the Pyromancer, extending their lead a little bit more. And funny enough, Gore, you were talking about Fire Giant, you know? I would feel if I was Leviathans, I don't even want to touch it and risk making a mistake there. You know? What's the point in even going for it early? We are dominating this game so far, and there's not really been an answer from the Scarabs at this moment.
And this is where things get a little more troublesome for the Scarabs, because when it's just kills, like if you're up 9-0, even if it's like Gold Fury for Pyromancer, you're not necessarily taking favorable trades, but you're still getting objectives. Now they're not getting kills, but they're also missing out on the objectives. With the Primal Fury going down, then the Pyromancer going down, there's not a lot of opportunity for them to really try and get gold that's built onto the map. Maybe knock down a tower or two, but the lowest tower is halfway down, and that's on the solo lane that's already pushed up there for Julio. So there's so many opportunities, I think, for the Scarabs to still come back into this. But the Leviathans are doing a fantastic job of making it very slim and far and few in between. It's so difficult to get in there to take a Fury, to take a Pyromancer, because the Leviathans have, like, as you had highlighted, the ward coverage. They see where you are, know what you're doing, and can collapse on you like inbound.
A lot of pressure onto Bobby there, and Bobby ends up getting away for the time being. He juked out the shots from Yorko, intentionally or not. But look at the grouping from Leviathans in mid now. Take the tier 1 and continue the pressure. All 5 grouped together. Zap on the left-hand side will get a tier 1 tower, gives a bit of free farm to solo Troll 2. But you can already see Julio heading back to make sure a tier 2 doesn't fall on this left-hand side. As a tier 2 in the mid lane goes down for Leviathans. A good use of momentum there to open up this middle area.
It's unfortunate. Zap's not going to have the minion wave nor the just output damage that he needs right now at level 16, 2 levels down compared to where Hardcore is. You have nothing that's really going to be going your way to get that tier 2. If they had been able to go tier 1, tier 2, and left for tier 1, tier 2, and mid, even though you lose theoretically a little bit of that pressure from having your mid towers up, at least the gold doesn't get out of hand, right? You're still trying to keep up in that. Now they're about 9,000 gold behind them doing that. I'm starting to struggle here. I'm looking at the economy.
I got you.
And things are, the charts are bouncing up and down. There's a lot of moments where I think there are still openings for the Scarabs, but they haven't done the one thing I think that makes this composition so strong, and that's group up. I haven't really gotten to see them in a full 3 form, a 4 form, 5 form. And like, where do they group up and how do they group up? Right now, I'd say this next Oni Fury is one that you kind of have to at least show face for, try to get a fight in, because if you lose it, you might lose the game. But if you win it, you at least get something back in your favor. I think you might lose the game if you don't get this Oni Fury anyway, so you really have to start looking for ways to just be proactive and fight back even though you don't think it's going to be necessarily fruitful for you and the entire way.
Well, one thing to note at the moment is you can see Shinto in the mid lane, level 19 right now. Once upon a time, a minute a level was really good. And at this stage, 18 minutes in, he's level 19. That's insane. Solo Troll plucked, has to use the Somersault Cloud away early on. But Leviathans continue this journey up through the jungle, just looking for picks wherever possible and keeping Scarabs on the back foot. And I know Scarabs are starting to group a little bit now because they sense the Fire Giant could be under threat. And that's exactly where Leviathans are now. But it doesn't look like they're going to come over here, or are they? Keep an eye on the Jing 10. Keep an eye on that Erlang Shen. They'll be the first ones to get over here. But already the Fire Giant below 75% health here, and the pressure on mid instead. They do not want to contest this FG, seems to be the call. And that klaxon sound will be enough to know damage has been done. At least Zap will get some farm on the left. Maybe a tier 2 tower is the trade from Scarabs. They're just fighting for the scraps on the floor at the moment.
Well, they get that enhanced red buff stripped away from the Leviathans, potentially picked up there. I think actually Inbound just scooped it up for his belt. And like you said, tier 2 tower is going to go their way. And look, I'm not going to lessen the impact of it. That is a good pickup for them. The Phoenix Exposed, especially at needing state, like 20 minutes on, all you need is one good team fight and a Phoenix Exposed and you can win the game, right? That is a really good pickup for them. But in terms of the state of gold, things like that, it doesn't really give them an opportunity to go for this Oni Fury. In fact, it leaves the Leviathans in a better spot because all of the Scarabs just had to back. The Leviathans, with a Fire Giant and the level lead and control they have, plus what's soon to be a bunch of Oni minions running down the waves, should be able to knock out those last 2 tier 2s. And with 3 minutes left on a Fire Giant, there should be a Phoenix under threat here. The Scarabs are going to have to group up and figure out how to defend here, because otherwise their base is going to be cracked open and it will be very easy for the Leviathans to run it down and get into the Titan.
Well, we are on track here, Gore, for a perfect game 2. Scarabs haven't managed to find themselves a kill just yet against these Leviathans, and the way they're grouping at the moment shows me, you know, they're not willing to fight until they get to the Phoenix line, which is coming up relatively quick. Left-hand side being pushed in, mid lane being pushed in, and these Oni minions now pressuring all 3 of the lanes too. A difficult ask for Scarabs here, but this is the one chance they've really got. They're not going to get a chance to set up though. They're all in on Inbound already, and Bobby is annihilated one more time. SOT stepped up, gets put back in, and say goodnight, sweet prince. We hardly knew you either. The Phoenix on the left-hand side down to 50%. Transition from Leviathans to the middle area, and the perfect game is intact.
I mean, so far, if Inbound could get in there with this horrific emblem upgrade, with the shout that he has, the Furious Roar, there's so much he could do to set his team up, but the problem is he can't survive long enough. I mean, he's 3 levels down compared to where Rong Yu is. That's 2 Phoenixes now, and with only 3 members left, you could argue putting some pressure onto the Scarabs in the base right now, but I think it's a better, you know, dot your I's, cross your T's, go for this tower, get a massive gold lead. This has been textbook from the Leviathans. I mean, from top to bottom, the only objective they've dropped so far outside of the 3 towers was a single Pyromancer, so the only one neutral objective not going their way here. It has been control from top to bottom, and I don't want to count the Scarabs out just yet, but they really need to rethink the way they approach this defense, because the Leviathans made that one look pretty easy, and they got 2 Phoenixes out of it.
I'll be honest, I don't think there's much hope for them now with only 1 Phoenix remaining on this right-hand side. I kind of go back to the early game here, God, too, because that's where this all snowballed from, if I'm honest. And it was in the duo lane. But more importantly, I feel like, I don't think the start from Scarabs was terribly bad, you know? They sent layers over to red buff. They tried to get Bobby and Zap in lane as quick as they could. But Rongyu and Yorkor were right alongside, even pace with them. And as soon as Yorkor hits level 2, he's going to be looking to dash in and keep the pressure going. It's almost like a double pluck in that lane with how that giddy up ends up working for them. And now we're in a state where Fire Minions to the left, Fire Minions in the middle, and Julio just able to push up on his own on this right-hand side. Do you wait for the next Fire Giant Gore, or do you even care at this point if you're the Leviathans?
Man, right now, you can knock down this tier 2 no problem. You could probably pressure the Phoenix pretty well, even without Fire Giant, but with everyone kind of spread out the way they are, it's going to take a little bit of time. I think once Yarkor joins the conversation, they can start putting pressure on it, but of course, they're not even going to wait for it. Like you said, they've been so far ahead and in control. The only person who's caught up is Baronic now at level 20, finally matching what Shinto has on the other side. And they don't need Fire Giant. They didn't even need the buff to despawn you. I didn't think they'd have time.
No, I know. I didn't think they'd have time to get the third one. I thought they would wait for the next FG,
Jeez.
but not the case. All 3 Phoenixes now down. Scarabs definitely in the back of their head thinking about what we need to adjust for game number 2, because nothing went right in game 1. The main thing they could really try and do is stop the shutout at this moment in time, find a pick and just make themselves feel a little bit better about it. But at the moment, Yorkor is just forcing ult onto SOT, and Layers, who's just on the left trying to farm, gets picked away by 3, and now it is a rough situation. The Titan, not the tankiest boy in the world, if I'm honest. He doesn't defend himself too well, and well, the Scarabs aren't even defending themselves too well, let alone the Titan. This is looking like writings on the wall. Let's get a kill, though, Scarabs. Come on.
I mean, yeah, all towers down, all Phoenixes down. This Titan is about, well, no, it is as weak as it can possibly get. If you just focus it, it's going to be a win state for them. This is a good spot for the Scarabs to try and fight back, but they just need to do it fast.
But Rongyu's taking a lot of damage there. Focus on the health bars as Zapman will survive by getting back to Fountain. Still Rongyu alive on the front though. Will they find a kill this game? No, Rongyu escapes the Desert Fury. Julio gets Bobby. Shinto gets solo Troll. Panic Tom gets Zapman. And Baronic gets to watch on as the Titan falls in less than, let's be honest, this game was over in 20 minutes. 17-0. Leviathans. Beautiful. Clean. Very, very good. And no surprises, smiles on the faces. Scarabs, back to the drawing board for them, go.
Yeah, I think this is one that you have to, just erase is the best way I can describe it, right? Like, you come into this and you say, you know what? That didn't go our way. Push it out of our minds. Let's just go into game number 2. Try and stay fresh, right? Mental elasticity is like a term I like to use. Like, how well can you get pushed to the brink but snap back to exactly where you need to be? And I think that's where the Scarabs are going to find themselves right now, is just come into this fresh, recognize that things didn't work out. Turns out that on her curse is a little stronger than the buff that you get from having the Xing Chen on your side. So try to rework maybe the duo lane, because that's where things really started to go rough, and then it just kind of rippled out from there to the rest of the map. So maybe try to figure out a good way to get that under control first, but it's going to be tough. There was a lot going on there that the Leviathans did right.
I'll be honest, I'm not jealous of the deaths they'll be following us after this break, because they've got to try and break down that game, and where do you start? I mean, it was domination from Leviathans. We'll be back after the break, though, for Game 2 and see if Scarabs can bounce back.
Welcome back, Smite fans. If you want to dominate the competition just like the Leviathans did, of course, you got to go to, speak for a living, by the way, shop.smiteproleague.com. That's the place that you can go in order to get all the official SPL gear for Season 8. We've got shirts, hoodies, jerseys for all your favorite teams, and some generic Smite Pro League merchandise. So make sure you're heading on over to shop.smiteproleague.com there in order to snag those up. Miff, so normally on these death segments, I'm playing the role of the host. I would say, hey, I've got Mifflin here to try and explain what happened in that game. But I do believe that even if we have some first-time viewers in the chat, they should be able to tell you that that game was not close, and the Leviathans just played a lot better.
But we could do them a little bit better than that, Aggro. We can at least bring up the ideology that the Scarabs had. They wanted to win the early game, didn't work. They wanted to utilize pressure out of the duo lane. Well, Zapman died between his towers thrice, I believe. There's a lot that we could talk about, but maybe you're right in saying that the writing's a little bit on the wall here. And getting a peek at this clip and a little bit of slow-mo. All you fans at home, don't jump between towers, because this will happen.
Or out of base. You shouldn't be jumping out of base if you're trying to play it perfectly. Zapman, look, the game was already over at this point, if we're all being honest with each other. It's 9 minutes in. It was 7-0 and a 4,000 gold lead. This is where the game got out of hand, really. I mean, Yarkor had already set up for first blood. They'd already gotten a second kill, and then Inbound walks back in at level 3 and just gets decimated instantly. Mifflin, can you explain, maybe even to the SPL duo lanes, but to a lot of duo lanes, we've seen this Chiron pick get ahead early, and I feel like it's pretty obvious what's going on, but teams keep falling for it.
It's that benevolence pickup in the first slot. Sometimes we see these supports kind of wait it out a little bit, get their boots first, then go back and pick up their starter item. But when you're playing with Chiron or any aggressive hunter in general, it is slightly recommended that you pick up benevolence so they hit level 2 first because of that all-in potential, or they hit level 5 first. So they could just do 80% of someone's HP bar immediately. And that's what happened this time around. Yarkor hits level 2 on first wave, dashes forward, and then from there the Solar Scarabs were off balance for the rest of that laning phase.
Yeah, I mean, we saw this kind of happen at the beginning of last season where it was more traditional duo laning again, and it was all about teams getting used to the level 4 or the level 2 power spikes that you're going to be seeing in that duo lane and giving enough respect when you know they've got lane pressure, and teams just aren't doing that. We saw it yesterday with PBM and Pandacat doing this start where Chiron hits level 2 first, and they get instant lane pressure and kill potential. We see it here again today. Here's the deal. If you see the Chiron, check to see if the support has benevolence. If they do, you stand at tower line, because otherwise they're going to all in and kill you. Hopefully that adjustment will be made moving forward, and I'm sure it will. Sometimes it just takes some time for things like this. I don't know, Miff. I mean, I think if you're the Scarabs, that's one of those games that you go, okay, well, let's just not even think about it. Let's not. I don't even think you discuss what went wrong for the vast majority of the time outside of that early dual lane interaction, and you just load in and pretend like it's game 1 because you're not getting a whole lot of valuable info from that one.
Maybe one more little facet of information. Inbound might want to pick up beads against a high CC composition like we saw that the Leviathans bring last time around, because how many fights started off with Inbound trying to jump forward, gravity surge, or tail whip, gravity surge, and then from there they just never really had a support. Maybe it's just a little bit more survivability from the relic selections on the side of the Scarabs.
Yeah, it's what we talked about in picks and bans. They want to get on the back line. They want to put pressure on this Chiron and on the Morrigan. We need Blink, or in Inbound's case, I think he went Sunder and Horrific potentially. You want those items in order to put pressure on, but if you don't have beads, this composition is just designed to kill frontline, and they did that over and over and over and over again and ended up going with the perfect game there for the Leviathans. No way it's a perfect set, though. I'm sure the Scarabs are going to bounce back here as we get into picks and bans for set number 2, for game number 2 of set 1. Can't let it happen to you twice. You know, you get blanked in one game, it happens. Can't happen twice. We're looking for one here for the Scarabs.
Aggro, I'm going to pose a question, and I know we're breaking the norms here, but I know that training exercise, the first ability from Chiron, is a cleanse. It's going to remove hard CC from your allies and yourself, but it does also cleanse slows, right? Horrific Emblem in that first slot selection. What's the point, bro? I mean, Chiron's just going to drop one at his feet, and all of a sudden your relic selection does nothing. Maybe just an interesting choice from Inbound there, trying to think about shutting down anyone besides the Chiron inside of those team fights. But for now, we can focus back in on Game 2, as I'm sure both of these teams are doing themselves.
Well, it is the Athena and Morrigan bands here for the Solar Scarabs, and Giannis and Heimdall for the Leviathans. You said something pretty interesting about Zapman's God Pool so far this year during that game, and that's that he's basically only won on Heimdall. That's been the pick for him throughout this year. One lone win on Kernanos Outstanding. It's been the Heim for every Solar Scarabs victory. Is that correct?
It sure is. It's 3 out of 5 games on Heimdall. The Solar Scarabs have been able to win. 1 stray win on the Cernunos, and then outside of that, just losses across the board. I think it's just Jingwei that rounds out the P's and B's for the Solar Scarabs ADC, and the Leviathans certainly have done their homework. Heimdall banned out. They do not want to deal with it, and I think they're right to do so.
Yeah, I think that's the right call. Wow, look at that Origin ban coming from the Solar Scarabs in this first pick slot. Feels more like we just don't want to ban something that we think is strong, and we're trying to maybe incentivize a trade for Tiamat, but ends up not going their way. It is Cucullin, first pick overall for the Scarabs. And remember, they had the option to go Cucullin last game where they went Xingqian on her and decided against it. They decide this time that they want to prioritize Solar Patrol's God.
And Cucullin is a decent pickup, doesn't have too many bad matchups, should be able to hold his own within the lane. So it makes sense as a first pick, is just kind of letting the rest of the Scarabs figure out where they want to go inside of their draft. Leviathan's doing largely the same, going to take a peek towards that Sobek in the first slot, but in the second pick position, they're going to get one more inside this round. Wouldn't be too surprised if we see the ADC pickup. We know Yarkor likes going aggressive, but instead, it's the King Arthur lock-in, just making sure their Soul Lane is able to match up properly. King Arthur eats a recent nerf, a little bit less mitigations from his passive, but still going to be able to apply a ton of damage. Just has more abilities than the majority of gods in the game.
Leviathan's just waiting and letting the rest of their team counterpick. A similar situation to what we saw last game with that Xingqian pickup, despite the Sobek on the other side. This time it's Arthur, even though they know Cucullin's locked in, that Arthur's not going to be picked. None of the other Leviathans players seem ready to lock in their selection, as it's Yamoja, the pickup for Rongyu. And when we're talking about how good he's been, what this team has really excelled at, this is exactly the pick that I think of for Rongyu, man. He has looked lights out on this Yamoja this year.
He has, but Inbound not nearly as much so, right? And keeping this trend of just rocking the Leviathans draft, I mean, when I think of Baronic, I don't think of Merlin, but when I think of Shinto, I certainly do. If we were to switch around these teams, wouldn't be too surprised, but let's go ahead and talk about Inbound's performance on this Yamoja in the past. It's been a little bit hit or miss. Sometimes he's looking incredibly strong, he's initiating these fights, displacing the opposition and utilizing that healing incredibly well, and then other times, we just see him walk a little bit too far forward, kind of baits his team into bad positions, gets a little bit over-aggressive. Yamoja much more of that facilitator role. I really do prefer when we get to see Bobby play those aggressive picks.
Let's see if he can make it work on the Yamoja this time around, as it seems like the junglers really like getting to pick their gods last, and this time a little bit more focus onto that Awilish for Panatom, and rightfully so. That has been the pick for him basically all year, and boy did he dominate on it in the last game, so it does not surprise me the Scarabs do not want to face it again. Whereas the Leviathans split their bans. They banned the Ratatosker and the Danza Burrow. Danza, one of those gods that we haven't seen too much of. We saw him yesterday for Vote, and let's just say it didn't exactly go his way, but Zapman's shown a willingness to go to this pick before.
Yeah, Danza Burrow's a god that I think, if he pulls ahead, could be one of the most dominant hunters in the game right now. His all-in potential, his ability to close gap, incredibly strong. But if Danza Burrow falls half a level, an entire level behind at any point in any of these matches, he's so easy to shut down. Sure, a little bit of movement speed stem inside the 3 to help you escape, immediately stripped away the second he takes damage, and that ultimate, sure, you get a little bit of CC immunity, but the second you collide with an enemy god or a wall, well, you're just a sitting duck. I think that's the double-edged sword that is Danza Burrow, but nobody walks that knife edge like the Z-Man. Loves to play those aggressive picks like Artemis that can either flop or just do great, depending on the match.
Serket for Panatom. I really thought he was going to hold his pick here and hope for a Daji selection. That was my guess based on how little CC immunity is on the other side between the Yamoja and the Merlin. I think this might have been the draft for it, but they decide to go with the more setup-oriented god in the jungle, and that is that Serket putting all their eggs in the Shinto basket with this draft so far. But I think that's a strategy that's worked pretty well for them in the past. Don't think that you can fault the Leviathans for going with that sort of idea.
And Panatom's ability to rotate into the dual lane is only going to be kind of further pushed out into the open by this Serket pick. It's very mobile, very easy to get aggressive throughout the early, and is going to have some decent targets to lock down. Jingwei very survivable, but that dot damage from the ultimate should be able to chase out that airstrike relatively easily. I'd say so far the Leviathans come away with a very similar identity that we saw in Game 1, just a strong composition, just standard Smite through and through, with decent CC lockdown, a strong front line, and then a back line that should be able to explode anyone who steps too far forward. Whereas the Scarabs, now with the full look at their full 5-man draft, I feel like is lacking a little bit in the CC department. Who's really initiating these fights? Is it going to have to be Yamoja looking for the 3 every single time? Is it always going to be up to the Riptide? Or is it going to be Tsukiyomi using the Piercing Moonlight to close gap? It's just not a lot of lockdown potential on the side of the Scarabs.
Yeah, I think you're right to highlight their lack of hard CC. They've got good poke damage at the very least, though. I mean, Tsukiyomi plays so well from a range. Merlin plays very, very well from a range. You might be looking to just bait Solar Troll in a lot of these fights and let your Merlin damage come over the wall and be a pseudo-initiator that way. But I agree with your assessment, man. This Solar Scarabs draft is high execution. Whereas on the other side, the Leviathans, everyone's got some hard CC in their kit. Everyone can peel for themselves pretty well. And then they've got that upfront damage, of course, between the Scylla and the Anhur coming through. But the Scarabs draft is a little bit hard to lock down on the other side, so it might not be so easy for the Leviathans this time around.
Lots of CC immunity for the Scarabs, as well as additional mobility afforded to the entire team by Yamoja. Sustain coming through as well from the healing, so I think that the Scarabs have the ability to fight around these neutral objectives. If they are able to group up as 5, they don't necessarily have to be the ones initiating the fights, as long as they're able to dig in their heels and establish a dominant position in these neutral territories, be it Gold Fury or Pyromancer or even Fire Giant, and force the Leviathans to fight into them. That's where the Scarabs are going to be at their absolute best, when they can utilize their best tools. But if the Leviathans are the ones showing up to these neutral objectives first, I don't see how the Solar Scarabs are going to be able to fight their way in to a Leviathans draft that is just kind of playing defense.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that positional establishment is going to be very important this time around for the Scarabs, because you're right. You do not want to walk in to a Sobek Serket composition ever, basically no matter what. Those gods are so potent at setting up those picks. They got to be early to those objectives. They don't retake those spaces particularly well. Talk to me about the Tsukiyomi pick for layers here, Miff, because Tsukiyomi, top of the pick band the very beginning of the year, has seen nerf after nerf. Finally, it seems like he might have been pushed out a little bit, but we still see him here for layers.
I think Tsukiyomi is still in a very good spot. As far as itemization goes, I do prefer to see him go a little bit more bruiser based, because that Piercing Moonlight is just going to put you out of position no matter what. You finish off a kill, well, you're still going to be in the enemy backline once you teleport forward. So that additional survivability that tank items afford him does go a long way, which is why we do, when we do, rather, see Tsukiyomi in Season 8 recently, it's been out of the Soul lane. But he still has that burst potential. The Kusari Gamma absolutely shreds if you're going for a full assassin build. Does upwards of 800 damage in the late game. His poke potential is incredible as well. It's just that double-edged sword, man. If he falls behind inside the jungle, not a ton of comeback mechanics for him.
Difficult to find, and that was the case for layers in Game 1. He did less than 2,000 damage on the Erlong Shen. He'll do more than that on the Tsukiyomi. Tsukiyomi's just getting damaged by being around people all the time, so I'm not too concerned about his numbers this time around. Scarab's trying to bounce back mentally from a near-perfect game from the Leviathans. And you're really looking at what Solar Troll's going to do for you, man. I mean, you first pick his Cucullin. He was quiet in Game 1, though the way that game went, I don't think you can put too much blame on him. Wondering what he's going to do here on this Cucullin.
Well, I'm not expecting too much from him inside the early game. Sure, Cucullin, once he does get into that late game phase where Soul Lanes are able to rotate out, is going to be a fantastic frontliner. Has some of the best CC on this Solar Scarabs draft, which does not bode well for the CC on your team as a whole, but that knockup is going to be very large, as well as the CC immunity on him. I think that, if anything, the Solar Scarabs are trying to establish a lead through the early, utilize this aggression from Yamoja, and then just have their Soul Laner act as goaltender on these objectives.
Well, they've already had a perfect game. Can they have a perfect set Leviathans looking for it up against the Scarabs, and oi! Is that Indu Man?
Oh, yeah, I guess it is. Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. The odds of 2 perfect games in a row, Gore, I ain't going to see that happening. Let's be honest. It's not going to happen, especially with these compositions, and especially with that many beads. Holy Solar Scarabs were beads, boys. That's
I mean, it's exactly what Mifflin had asked for, right? Like, he was saying, if you've got a heavy CC comp on the other side, do something about it. This seems to be the good way to respond. Serket, as well as the Sobek, going to be really good initiators. Julio, when he joins the fight, going to be a great initiator. There's a lot of pressure, I think, on the Scarabs to bounce back here. And it's difficult, right? Like, I mean, you have to put yourself in the scenario kind of similar to where we are. We just saw them kind of get stomped on. I mean, there's not many ways to look at that last game and think that they were finally winning it. Most of the time, like, I mean, sub 10 minutes we're 5,000 gold down. So all of a sudden you have to start figuring, how do you bounce back from that? And the hard part is you have to forget it happened and try to box it up, put it out of there, and just kind of pretend that it was, you know, maybe a bad dream for the Scarabs.
Sure.
But they have to come back from that and be aggressive, a little more proactive. I'm looking at layers this time around to kind of dictate the pace of the early game, be more in the jungle, in the face of the Leviathans, and try to control Shinto and specifically Panatom, because we didn't get to see a lot of layers last game. We didn't get to see a lot of the dual lane from Scarabs either. But I think if one of the two, either Zap or Layers, or I guess actually honestly Inbound or Layers, are able to stay aggressive and kind of create scenarios for their team to be successful, then we'll see them have a lot more of a fight back than we got in Game 1.
Interesting to see. I felt like Kyra might end up getting banned, but he didn't even get looked at by either team here, so maybe he's not as strong as we may look like for the time being. But we'll see as that continues to develop. Zap definitely went with the Jingwei after realizing that Wheelix wouldn't be available. Does get plucks and has to leap away, but still going to take a bit of damage. Impale off the mark there from your core. But you can already see that Bobby's going to be heading back to base earlier, picking up that benevolence now after starting off with just boots earlier on, and trying to give a bit more farm now over to his AD carry in that lane.
And this is something we've seen a lot more, and I think the conversation of boots to start, depending on how aggressive you want to be, is something to talk about. But right now, Inbound, I mean, forced to use a Riptide just to disengage, takes a lot of damage in the process. Like, it's one of those things that they're going to be just slightly behind Yarkor and Rongyu, and they're going to have to deal with that. Again, it's not a big deal just yet. You can see Zapman ticking over to 3 there. Wouldn't be surprised if Inbound hits it either off this wave, right there at the very end. So it's not a huge amount behind, but it's still enough that it's very similar to game number 1, right? And so far, they haven't been able to get the same amount of aggression. But I think Rongyu's just looking to force some beads sometime soon, and that's where these plucks are coming in handy. Zapman's on a safe pick in Jingwei. He's 0 for 2 on games so far this split as Jingwei, though, so there's a lot of wiggle room for error.
Ooh. Well, a little bit of an error from Rongyu there, just getting juked out by Bobby. He was in a bit of trouble there in that dual lane for a second, I was going to say. Still does have the beads available, though, if worse came to worse in that situation. Did just notice a mid, though, Shinto on the Scylla. Started off with Book here, Book 1. I'm wondering where he's going to head into next. It's probably going to be the Book of Toth, but it's not something we see too much of as of late. A lot of people focus on that Rodder Tahuti and whatnot, but a 3v2 in mid lane, and Shinto wasn't aware there. Not able to find anything, but it's Zap being left on his own again, and the beatdown continues in duo, just trying to punish him as Zap does his best at surviving. Guess what? Jingwei's one of the best at doing that, goal.
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult to log Zap down. Soon enough, he'll be level 5, still has his beads available. Against Sobek, you can dash out of the pluck or dash after the pluck to get back that distance that he displaces you. Once your beads are online and your ult's online, then you've got even more survivability. Something that Zapman does, like Heimdall, Jingwei are very safe, and they're also right in his wheelhouse. Just because it feels like not only on his stream, but just in general, he tends to have more ganks than anything. I wonder if there's a way to track that. I have no idea if there's a way to follow that stat, but it just feels like Zapman's duo lane has a little more going on in it than maybe some of the other carries.
Look at this, in the jungle, Layer's going to get picked off potentially here, uses the Piercing Moonlight for a bit of immunity, but still taking poison damage, and will go down to Rongyu with a pluck at the tail end there. And that was really around the same time Blue was coming up. Julio was a little overextended intentionally there, up against SOT, trying to force a situation maybe, and Layers gets picked apart in the jungle. First blood going to Rongyu, not the greatest thing in the world, but, you know, supports won't complain.
And, I mean, it's one of those things, Rongyu's going to be happy because, hey, I just got a kill. But also it was on the Layers, right? So, like you said, not necessarily the worst thing, but definitely not the best thing. It is fortunate that it just goes on to Rongyu instead of someone like Panatom, but having Layers fall down, even just a little bit, shouldn't hurt him too much now. But that's going to be something that you have to keep in mind, and that he's going to have to keep in mind. They're willing to get aggressive in his jungle. And so Layers is going to have to be not just more proactive, but a little more cautious. And it comes back to what we were talking about in the first game, which was ward coverage. Right now I see a couple of wards thrown up, a little more red than blue. Not necessarily as devastating as it was in game number 1. This feels like a slower draft for the Leviathans anyway, and they're not looking for all of those early game fights just yet. So I expect to see potentially the Scarabs look for a little bit more coverage, try to slow down the Leviathans, and just keep an eye on them because they've been such a nuisance and such a hassle to keep up with.
Exactly.
I think it's going to be very crucial for Layers to stay alive in this.
But I think you're completely right, though. I think the goal from Scarabs this game, especially the draft they've got, is to farm and pick fights effectively and not get picked apart in the early game. The Jingwei, for example, the Yamoja, really going to lean into that and allow them to farm up. And they do scale well into the later stages of the game goal if they can try and stay at an even keel. And Zap at the moment, you know, he's actually a little bit ahead of your core for the time being in this dual lane. Not by much, though, but ever so slightly. And at the same time, Inbound still keeping pace with Rongyu. So it's a much different affair for the Scarabs this time round, and that makes a lot of sense. This solo lane, though, Gore, is definitely where attention was at. The Des was talking about if you're going to give solo or troll this first pick, then you're hoping to make some work through it, or at least make sure it's going to hold its own. And that's where Leviathans seem to be paying attention to,
Yeah, I was going to say holding its own seems to be exactly what it's doing. A greater Scorpion pressure on the left. This is a good pickup for the Scarabs, honestly. I mean, you get some of the enhanced buffs. A little bit of them, nerfed. I think the purple buff was just nerfed in the enhancements. It's not going to give quite as much extra attack speed as it was before, but admittedly, it's still really solid because any bonus attack speed is going to be great for your hunters early on or anytime throughout the game. I think same thing for the red buff, gives that additional lifesteal. Not crazy, but I think early on, especially for someone here like Baronic, doesn't have any that he's built up and doesn't look like he's going to be building any up, some survivability that's going to exist there on the side of the Scarabs. But because they invest so heavily into the right side, as you had highlighted from the Leviathans, they don't really get much out of it, so it's a small win for the Scarabs. Still a, 500, 600 gold lead going towards
and that's
the
first blood
Leviathans.
go. Yeah. That's just the difference between First Blood, if I'm honest, is that what Rongyu got from that is the real difference between the two. But this invade from Scarabs looks good for now. Rongyu tail whipping in, trying to cause a problem for Bobby, who gets plugged back into danger. Still has more available, though, for Riptide, or should I say Omni. The chase is on, though, when he's out. Has to drop the walls down. Will use the walls to separate, but Panitam could be in an awkward spot now. Piercing Moonlight's good for damage, but gets pulled under the tower, and now it's Layers in trouble because the rest of his team didn't follow up or try and support. He's going to avoid the Armor Monster. Backstep's good, but still surviving. Will go down to Shinto and the basic attack as the rest of the team fall. Layers had to ult there, I feel like, but at the same time, just didn't get any backup from his team.
No backup from his team. Even still, I'm really impressed with their ability to dodge. Like, a lot is invested on both sides there to make sure those fights go the way they do, to get that second kill there for the Leviathans. 6 total ults are dropped in the game. Baronic was in the fight but didn't technically count because he doesn't have a true ultimate in that regard. But the thing that's interesting is how well the Scarabs went from what felt like a very losing fight. I mean, something that should have been maybe 2 or 3 kills in favor of the Leviathans, just to losing 1. Still sucks that it's Layers. Like, there's no way to sugarcoat that one. Your jungler, you do not want to be the only one dead. It is definitely going to impact the impact they can have on the game. But it is still something that you can say is comfortable. He's level 8 to Panatom's level 8. He's not too far behind. His farm is keeping up. And so in terms of levels, maybe he's not been there in the fights exactly the way you would want, but he's not been so displaced out of this game that you're having to figure out how to come back from, 8 minutes in, which is what was happening in Game 1. Game 1 was, how do we even catch up and farm at this point? Right now, levels are all...
Zap. Under pressure again. Beautiful wall placement from Yorkor there, but still didn't come to naught because of the gust. And Zap will get away. Now the rotation coming from Scarabs, but I think Leviathans are wise to it as well. Layers now looking for an opportunity if he can, but pressure really relieved for a moment. Zap goes back to farming and continues to stay okay with his beads intact.
This is something I want to see Layers be a little more part of. I'll admit, I want 6 kills on Layers, and if this is the last game, I need him to get it this game. He is 6 kills away from 250 in his career, and that does include his time on console, right? But it's just something like, I wrote down a bunch of these milestones, and I've been watching that 0 maybe a little bit too closely just because of the fact that I know he's so close to hitting something like that, but it is this really awkward area because it's also, in my eyes, the most important thing that needs to change for the Scarabs, not just because they didn't get a kill in Game 1, but also because if your jungler isn't really able to get an impact, if neither that assist column nor the kill column goes up, you're not feeling anything for this game, at least proactive play. Like, inbound can really set up a lot of plays, and I think he's going to be able to open a lot of opportunities. But Baronic, like Merlin, isn't the guy I think of as like your top kill mage. He's going to be coming in and applying some damage. It's going to be Layers and Zap.
Rongu taking a bit of damage, but gets the pluck on inbound, who bees away just as that came available for him. Down again as the Riptide drops down, and here comes Layers, looking for the piercing moonlight on Rongu, who had the look in the woods. Now Layers out of position here. Great use of the ultimate from Bobby, though, just to give him a bit of separation and no further gank potential there, as Peloton may have been lurking more. You can even see Julio was starting to make a rotation, too. So at the moment, it's still relatively even between these two teams. Slight lead for Leviathans at the moment. As we tune back in with SOT. Funny enough, Gore, I'm really interested in these mid lane builds as well. The boots changes I'm noticing. More and more of these mages starting to go towards Shoes of the Magi now. Getting a bit more lifesteal, a bit more power from these boots. I guess that's because of the amount of cooldown you can find elsewhere these days. It kind of makes sense to me.
Especially because, like you said, the cooldown seems a little more easily and readily available for them. That lifesteal is going to be crucial in terms of some survivability. What I'm really excited to see is that Baronic is also picking up that Charon's coin. Just recently got a little bit of a buff on the top end as well. Something we've seen a couple of these mid laners go to, and you have to get it as a first item. But if you don't get those stacks, it does still feel kind of like you're banking a hope. Now it's a little more worthwhile even if you aren't able to get the kills.
Ooh. Zap got aggressive there for a second, just put Panitom on check, but look at the wraparound from Rongu and Yorkor hanging around the area. Zap under pressure, but back up from Baronic will keep Rongu honest and stop Yorkor rotating around the back. Right-hand side, Julio dueling out still with Solo or Troll. Blue buff wrapped around Julio's waist, though, so tells me he did manage to get his own, as Solo or Troll tried to get a bit of poke damage off there. We did see some nerfs towards King Arthur in terms of his passive and his sustainability, but it's not impacting him so far. Speaking about stuff like that, Yorkor will get his own buff there after using the Desert Fury.
Yeah, those nerfs, I think it was, what, 2% total mitigations? I have it over here. I can just go look at it, yeah. So 1.5% per stack, now down to 1% per stack. So from a max of 6 to a max of 4. It's not hurt him at all.
Bobby still in trouble here. Gets it by the hammer monster from Shinto. Panitom credit with a kill. Then Layers, who tried to get in action, ate some damage from that Book of Tough. Meanwhile, Zapman taking on Yorkor and Rongu does a pretty good job there. Still has his relics available. But now without that ultimate, one safety net no longer available. Meanwhile, Leviathans heading into the jungle and Panitom still on the aggression. Looking to keep Baronic back as long as possible away from this farm.
But I really like the way things are getting adjusted so far, not just for the Scarabs. I mean, they're still down 0-3, but that's way less kills than they were on the board at 13 minutes into game number 1. So they've slowed down the pace of the Leviathans, even if the gold lead is still a little in their favor. It's not as drastic as it was last game. Kills, same thing can be said. And even though he's falling, I want to say, a little bit behind in terms of build, that Wind Demon just now finished for Yorkor, both hunters went for their crit item first after boots as opposed to waiting a little bit. And that's going to favor Zapman, I think, in those trades just because of the inherent kind of kit nature and synergy that it has with Jingwei. He gets his Wind Demon here. We got to see a little bit of that damage coming out there in that boxing match against Yarkor.
Yeah, there was explosive bolts from Jingwei there, but look at this wrap in mid. Rongu getting aggressive against Baronic. Baronic did a good job, but backup was there for Leviathans, and it's Bobby who didn't realise he was getting focused down there. The Riptide will keep him alive for now. Panitom, without his ultimate available, wasn't able to really combine to pick up that final pick, but it will force Bobby back to base. And can Leviathans find something else? They're on the hunt again, but there's not much available outside of maybe the Gold Fury, but it might be a bit too early to look that direction.
It's so tempting, right? Like, I want to make a Gold Fury call there if I'm them, but it's so risky at the same time that you can go in. The good news is, and this is always going to be the conversation if there's a Merlin in the game, the burn for and damage overall for an objective, neutral objective, is going to be in favor of the Scarabs because Merlin is really good at DPS onto things like a Fire Giant, a Pyromancer, and a Gold Fury. Secure that Shinto brings should bring some security to the Leviathans, right? It should make them feel comfortable, a little more confident in their ability to engage things like that, or their ability to try and steal it away in the case that the Scarabs start it up. And that's something that they have to be worried about. But they do still have other ways of controlling objectives on the side of the Scarabs, right? Inbound throwing up his walls, Zapman's ult, even though it's not a lot of damage, is still a good amount of burst damage. Plus, he can typically get out of the area pretty safely afterward as well, so it's a safe way to engage, get a burst, and get out.
Oh, Leia's being chased through the jungle by Rongyu, and Shinto's there with a crush. I'm a monster does not rip through, and instead Leia's will just squeak between the Sobek and the wall back to safety as well. So good at gank attempt from Leviathans again. Meanwhile, on this side, Zap forced to immediately beat away from that Impale that was beautiful from hardcore, and that could just be a signal for Panitom to be like, come here, I want a piece of this Zap, who's now injured a bit more. The lazy back, Desert Fury, he's got no ultimate, so he does have his ultimate available, and he will get away, but Panitom's still giving chase. The kiss will connect, but it's not good enough to follow up anymore. And Zap will live for a second. No beads, no ultimate though.
If there had been one more way to close the gap there for Panatom, I think he would have gone in for the ult, but he's just a little too far off, and trying to tank a tier 2 tower while the tier 1's up just seemed like a no-go. With the beads down, though, that opens up a lot of gank opportunities onto the left-hand lane.
Really does. Look at the ward coverage again from Leviathans. Deep wards on the right, deep wards on the left where possible, and also placing sentries to keep that control, keep the pressure on. And it's actually Scarabs deep in red territory here, around the red buff. Panitom leaps on in, full focus towards Leia's there yet again. He'll get the piercing moonlight off, but it won't do anything because he dies before it connects. Meanwhile, Baronic picked up by Julio and dunked down to oblivion. Leaping in goes your core now. Bobby forced to use his ultimate defensively, and this opens up the window for the Gold Fury.
Yeah, 2 kills, and the minute you see Julio over here, the conversation is immediately, yeah, okay, we're going to take this Gold Fury. There's no chance you're going to try and fight back on this. And even though, I mean, Zapman doesn't have his ult, right? Like, even the Hail Mary try and steal it isn't available for them there. So that's a good way to start solidifying it. Again, a much slower pace for the Leviathans to get to the same point and the same lead they were in. In fact, it's not even at the same lead yet. They're only about 3,000 gold up now, but that Gold Fury does set them onto a better trajectory. They don't trade it out for a Pyromancer this time, so there's still a lot of opportunities for them on the right side of the map to find some control. That's maybe worse news for the Scarabs than it is good news for the Leviathans. If they aren't able to bounce back and clap back in some neutral objectives, then where are they fighting back? I mean, a couple of the towers are a lot closer to fall than they used to be, so maybe they're going to be able to find some gold on the map there, but you look at their counterparts and they're a little bit lower, right? Solo lane has slightly more health there for SOT, but mid lane is just a stiff breeze from getting taken down and more gold in the Leviathan's pockets. I think that this comes back to what we were talking about, and not only just ward vision, but grouping up from the Scarabs right now.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten to see a whole lot of layers except on the receiving end of kills. So I really want to see what he can do, him, Baronic, as well as Inbound as a 3v3, and combination in terms of trying to lock down someone like Shinto or Panatom.
I think the question is, though, I mean, we saw Scarabs did group up for a second go, you know, they went to that red buff as a sort of a unit, trying to put some pressure on it, and it came back to haunt them a little bit. Maybe overextended, not the good enough war coverage to keep an eye on what's going on there, too. We'll see how this continues, though, because Scarabs aren't out of it yet. It is trending heavily, though, in the same sort of standard as we saw of Game 1. As we've been saying, though, not as quick, but it's still a bit of a situation here for Scarabs to battle back into. The good news is, if you look across the leads, the biggest lead, really, is in that mid lane at the moment. 2-level lead at the moment for Shinto over Baronic, but if Leia's gets picked in the jungle by Panitom one more time, this could be a death knell one more time, and he's going to walk right into your core. And your core might be given the kill here by Panitom. They're going to keep the chase going. Try to hold as much as they can and do so. Panitom credited with a kill, 6-0. But a Fire Giant at 18, okay. Julio's here though, boys. There's a ward there too. Here comes King Arthur. Welcome to the jungle. We like fun and games. He's going to spin around and buy as much time for his team as he can to rotate back in, force him off the FG. But this is a bad sheet. No, I'm a monster. Takes out Inbound, and now it's Baronic in trouble. He gets hit by the I'm a Monster for 2 kills, and now the rest of Scarabs are in tatters. They were trying to make something happen at the FG, and they get punished heavily by ward coverage, and Julio rotating in, buying time for Leviathans.
And Julio walks out. I mean, he's so close to dead for them, but they aren't able to lock him down. He almost kills off Baronic in that barrage. I think if he had given his life, he might have been able to. But like you said, we might get to see a perfect set for the Leviathans. At this rate,
no way, dude.
Starting to feel a little bit more confident. I don't know. They're getting a lot
way.
closer than I thought they would be. 20 minutes in, almost 20 minutes in. They still haven't died just yet. But they
I
are
don't
still slowed
think-
down. They're nowhere near as ahead as they used to be, so there's way more opportunities for the Scarabs to get at least a kill.
Yeah, I just don't think I've ever seen a perfect set before. I don't think it's possible. I really don't think in the world it is possible. So I am going to say they are going to get a kill. Okay? Maybe that's a caster curse. We'll find out, Gore. Surely not, though. There's no way I'm that powerful. Because at the moment, though, it's Scarabs to the offensive. Zap is still strong and he's still stepping up on this left-hand side. He wants to fight, but it's a whole ton of Desert Fury. And guess who's here? It's Rongyu, your best buddy once again. Gonna look for the kill, but misses the pluck. One basic will do it, make that two, but the slows are just too much. Yarko comes on in, and the knock-up is good. Zapman will live. Calculated, buddy. Or is it? Because look at Panitom. He's lurking, he's hunting too. The bad news is he's walked into Bobby, but Bobby's the one getting the tail end. And Rongyu's still chasing Zap all the way back as he continues to skip away. Bobby's still alive. Panitom should die. And there's first blood, surely, for Solar Scarabs. The unthinkable will not happen here today.
Layers had one goal there. I don't think he planned on living in that fight. He knew what he had to do, though. There was someone low on the Leviathans, and he had to stop there from being a giant goose egg at the top under their team. So finally, at least gets a kill. You know what? Something that can go towards him. 5 kills now away from getting 250 for his career. Hindu, I don't know. It took, what, 44 minutes to get just one of those? I feel like I can go ahead and stop counting on that one and maybe push that to the next set that the Scarabs play.
We'll see how Leviathans continue on, though. I mean, they will be playing in the groups this weekend, that's for sure. So, good news for all you fans out there. You'll see every single SPL team play this weekend. All of them will be in competition in these group stages that come up, and we get to work out who's going to go to the playoffs as the top 6 teams. Fury spawns again right now, though, and Scarabs have an opportunity right now on this left-hand side with men advantage to maybe look that direction. But there is ward coverage down for Leviathans here, and Yarko's still lurking. You can see the pincer maneuver coming in from Rongyu and Julio too, but this Fury is dropping relatively quick with the damage from Scarabs. The knockback's good though from Rongyu, trying to buy some time for his team. Fury's still alive, and it's actually Yarko and Shinto that are going to get it for them. Zap does get a kill though onto Rongyu, and he'll be punished for his discretions afterwards by Julio. Next on the list is going to be SOT, Sarat by 3. Shinto zoning away Bobby at the same time. They get a kill, they lose the Fury, and it's 12-2, and Leviathans are marching on.
You finally get something else, you clap back as the hunter, but you lose the Fury. I feel like it's one of those awkward calls. Do you drop it, do you not? And they didn't make it fast enough, right? You either need to stick to that and hope for the secure, or you need to drop it about 5-10 seconds earlier, because now there's a wide open fire giant. 3 members down, your carries are gone. Layers is on the other side of the map. Yeah, this feels like it's going to be free for the Leviathans. And Hindu, this is where it comes down. Towers, the Scarabs are technically in the lead as of right now. They've got 4 standing to the 3 for the Leviathans, but there's a lot of gold on the map that's going to fall into the pockets of the Leviathans here. When you look down at their builds, the Executioner getting picked up here. It should be a Deathbringer faster for Yarkor because of all that gold. Should be, I mean, what, if it wants to be a Rada Tahuti, whatever it is that Shinto wants to pick up, he's going to be happy with. And the same thing, these starter item upgrades are going to start coming online if they haven't already been bought. One for Yarkor there, one up there for Julio that they can go ahead and grab. Soon enough, going to be online for Panatom and Rongyu. That gold's going to be coming back and biting the Scarabs in a very bad way.
Oh yeah. Full credit though to Rongyu in that engagement around that Oni Fury too. If he doesn't initiate their blink on in and basically almost sack himself on the engagement, the Scarabs would have managed to get hold of that Oni Fury, but the displacement caused by the Sobek coming on in and the tail whip just pushed Scarabs away that they couldn't secure it, and sets up that whole tail of events that now means Leviathans have an FG buff, and the world is almost their oyster of where they go next. And with how the towers are looking, it's going to be down this left-hand side. The best Phoenix to attack, if you didn't know, mainly because it's the furthest one from defending the Fire Giant and forces somebody on this left-hand side, especially Gore when teleport isn't being picked up so much.
And it's one of those things where, you know, like you said, teleport, it used to be solo laners, very easy to send over there because they could show up in the fight whenever. Then you start looking at your, Apollos, your Chernobyls, your Athenas, maybe, depending on what role she's in, because the global ultimates. I'd say if they have to look towards defending when the Fire Giant comes back up, Zapman's going to be good over there because of the Jingwei passive, but this is actually even better. Zapman gets a tier 2 for tier 2. grand scheme of things, it's just going to make sure that their gold deficit
Paddy
isn't
Tom.
going to necessarily go much bigger.
He's stopping the backs, though. That's a great play from Paddy Tom. He's like,
no.
sure, boys, whatever. I'm hanging around it. You can kill me if you want. We'll take a Phoenix on the left-hand side, and maybe, just maybe, I'll still survive. And that's exactly what you're looking for out of a circuit in that situation. I watched him at that tier 2 go, and I'm like, he's not engaging with Zap. He's right to do so. The 1v1 could go either way. And the fact that Scarabs had backup coming through with ward placements down in the jungle and they're blue, Leviathans knew that was going on and played that beautifully.
I mean, they're 3 steps ahead of the Scarabs. Like, it's one thing to be there and recognize, you know what? We can force Zap to stay here if we give him promise of a tier 2 tower. He's going to want that. And then we can stop him from going back. Like, Panatom plays that incredibly well. And now, like we had said, there's an exposed Phoenix. It's a lot easier. You've only got a minute 30, minute 40 left on this Fire Giant. That's enough to knock down at least another tier 2. Maybe 2 if you'd go the safe route. Maybe another Phoenix if they want to get aggressive. Although trying to win a Phoenix fight right now, maybe going to be put on pause there. I think the Leviathans are looking for more gold. They have so much in their pockets still from that first siege. They're going to be able to back power pots to see a lot of wards, and since that's been the topic of discussion, it's been winning them a lot of fights right now. I see a little more blue than red. This is going to be what can help shift things right back in their favor. I guess even more in their favor as they're now up 11,000 gold, Hindu. I mean, that's so much.
Oh, yeah.
There's so much they can do with it.
And it's a hard ask for Scarabs to try and work their way back in this. I don't particularly think Scarabs have played badly this game. It has just been a very good performance from Leviathans with picking apart the right moments, choosing their engagements wisely, and dictating the pace of the game consistently. And now the death ball is online. You know, you've also got Staff of Murden on Shinto in mid on this Scylla. Double crush availability. Hello, love to see it. That's going to cause some problems too. And in fairness, Gore, I want to give some credit to Panitom here because I will remember last year there was a lot of talk about Panitom being potentially the weak link of this team. He struggled in some games, but this set specifically, he's had fantastic performance, and that Phoenix on the left-hand side was brought to you by Panitom, keeping 3 members busy on that right-hand side of the map. Leviathans, though, onto a tier 2 on right. Zap will get that left-hand tier 2, but we'll need to base quickly and get back to this fray. What can the Scarabs do here?
This is going to be a lot of weight for them to try and fight back, and my eyes fall immediately onto what layers can do. The burn from Baronic, really the peel from SOT and Inbound, if they're able to just kind of be the front line that is necessary here. Zapman's got his damage output. His items are online. You know he's going to hit hard. Same thing could be said for Baronic, but what can these front lines do to give them the opportunities and maybe peel for them long enough to make sure that they get that damage off? That's going to be the hard part, and with Fire Giant disappearing, it feels like a Phoenix fight still probably on the horizon for the Scarabs. I don't know if I like the idea of trying to leave the Phoenix line. Like, maybe if speed buff comes up while the Leviathans are gone, blue buff, well, no, that was just taken away by the Leviathans. So there's one objective that you could grab, maybe your red buff, but I don't know if you go into the Fire Giant pit because I don't know how well and how comfortable and in control of that fight you can truly feel on the Scarabs.
Well, there's a lot of wards just picked up by Scarabs now. They are starting to filter down to the right-hand side. I don't know, Go, with how this set's gone, I wouldn't, if I'm Scarabs, I'm kind of committed to an FG steal. I'm kind of going to fight the FG and call it a day. Like, I think it's one of the better ways than just sitting back on the Phoenix line and hoping for a good fight, in my opinion. I'm kind of for that, but at the moment, they may not get the window. Those wards haven't been placed down just yet. They weren't confident on the right-hand side. Minion pressure left and middle lane. And that left-hand Phoenix is coming up soon, just as the Fire Giant spawns. And you can see Solar Scarabs, it appears they are going to fall back and sit on defense on their Phoenix line.
It's one of those moments where you have to make that decision. Like you said, like a slow loss is definitely something. I'd rather lose it all at Fire Giant and watch it fade away as opposed to endure. But with that Phoenix respawning on left, there's not as much pressure on the Scarab's base. So maybe something they can look to defend. It is going to be weakened, so a lot harder for the Scarabs to defend it, as opposed to for the Leviathans to take it. But it does give them some opportunities. They're all pushed up really far, though. They're going to have to back a little sooner rather than later to try and get back into the base in time. I think they could still win a defense under their mid Phoenix, under their right Phoenix.
I don't know about this, boys.
But I don't like this.
I know, 2 of them are sticking. They're going to go for a Phoenix on the left-hand side here, Scarabs, with 2 of them, but they've just realized the error of their ways. Minions are going to aggro, I think, onto layers. unless he's got a minion wave there. Oh, he got lucky. So he will get back, but he's late to back. And I think if Leviathans would have realized that sooner, they could have already committed here. But look at Panitam in mid, already whittling down that Phoenix in the mid lane, forcing someone there to defend, and that's going to be Layers. Front lining, though, that right Phoenix is very low. Great ultimate from Inbound, though, trying to push back Leviathans, and in goes Solo or Troll 2 with a follow-up. The damage is here, but where can the damage come from? Piercing it up from Layers, takes out your core already. Crits from Zap at the back, trying to whittle down the help of Julio, and doing a good job of it. The base defense from Scarabs is good enough to hold for now, and that's a Fire Giant Leviathans team. If you're a Scarabs fan now, you're happy. We've held for now. It's not over, though. It's the first defense. There's going to have to be one or two more, I'd say, to really swing this back round.
Yeah, really big pickups for them. Getting rid of Yarkor, I think, is probably the biggest key. That's not an enhanced Fire Giant either. So Panatom, like any other circumstance, I'd say just run in and smack that last right Phoenix, 2 more times and you'd be fine with it. But now you need a minion wave. It's not yet past 30 minutes. So they're not going to, well, they're not going to have that buff until the next time it respawns, but he's going to go for this.
Panatom, great call from him, though. Well, yeah, the whole team's now coming back because they were 50-50. You saw them thinking about recalling.
Yeah.
Now Layers versus Panitom, but reinforcements on the way. And as soon as they turn up, the ambush comes out. But Piercing Moonlight's there from Layers. The collapse on Panitom is going to be painful, but he has bought time for his team not to lose a Phoenix at least and get some respawns through. Julio back on the map. Yarkor back on the map, but you can start to see the late game of Scarabs clawing their way back into the set.
Now, this is not going to be easy to get back by any means, but they've got 2 exposed Phoenixes on the side of the Leviathans. It's really simple. If the Scarabs can get another fight like that, 2 people down, 3 people down, then they're going to be able to walk right up to one of those, knock it down, potentially go into the Titan room. And this is also a great position. It is fortunate for Panatom. He's gone for a minute. But it's probably the least interesting minute that is going to exist in this game, right? There's no way for him to really get aggressive. But there's no Fire Giant, there's no Fury. The Pyromancer was just taken by Zap, so it's not like he's missing out on a whole ton either. Normally, stagger kills like that really start to worry me just because that's a whole minute in a 4v5 the Scarabs can do a lot with, but there's not a lot of opportunities for them to create a fight and create some engagement where the Leviathans are going to be in a kind of disadvantage. Now, the most they could do is try to rush down a Phoenix, but I think you're much better off trying to get your minion waves a little equal, strip away the jungle the way they are, get some of the experience, the gold back into your pocket, your items pretty much close to finish, so you've caught up on that point. Comes back to the wards conversation, a little bit of vision goes a long way.
Wrong you. Has an idea something weird's going on here, but he's still going to get hit potentially by a stun there. Bobby couldn't find the target. And I do want to give credit before this next fight goes about that front line. You were asking for Scarabs here, Gore. Their front line needed to do something to set up their team. And credit where it's due, SOT and Bobby combined very well there on that Phoenix defense to allow the room for their damage dealers to get through. And you can just see the player damage starting to trickle up now from this Solar Scarabs team. Leviathans, I think they're better off splitting the map, you know. I don't know if going for the straight 5-on-5 is a good play, and just avoiding this ultimate out from the Yamoja. Inbound is definitely the one that you're looking at to try and trap people in place, and last time round it came at the cost of your court.
It was really good. A well-placed ult because it separated the Leviathans from each other and kind of forced them into this awkward, like, to get out of the engagement from Inbound, they had to then walk into a very just weird position, and then it was a blink from SOT that kind of got into the backline and disrupted it. The Sony Fury, it looks like it was based on the position of Inbound and SOT, they want to fight here, and they're going to be getting aggressive. The Secure still goes over to the Scylla for me, and so that's a risky play for either squad, I think. A lot of burn on the Scarabs could hurt the Leviathans.
Yeah, looks like Leviathan being a bit more respectful now, realizing they're at the late stages, but wrong, you ate 2 crits to the face there straight away. Bitterpoke had to lurk in the waters early on. Nice little frostball out from their Baronic there, just keeping Panitom in check for a second or two. All the while, Yarkor was pulling that Fury for a moment. Fire Giant spawning in a few seconds time too, and it's Scarabs now on the Fury. What can they do? Wrong, you coming in, tail whip to force them back again. Rinse, repeat of last time we saw this fight. Meanwhile, it's Panitom is very, very low. Piercing Moonlight, is that going to connect at all? No is the answer. Julio, though, will be a casualty on the front side. And now it's a 4v5 with Scarabs on the offensive.
That's the biggest change. The last fight where Julio is able to pull, 4 members, and he almost kills off Baron and causes a lot of trouble, still walked out alive. They've been able to kill Julio off twice now in these last engagements. That's big for the Scarabs. A really good clap back here. took them 30 minutes. Well, let's give them credit. 28 minutes to really get to the point where they felt like they started to have some control. But that Phoenix defense on right has really flourished into a lot. The damage that they're outputting, I think, is kind of catching the Leviathans off guard. Julio thinks he can do a lot more than he's capable of, and he's gone for a beads as a second relic, blink there as well. So he's pretty much all in on the engage, but not a lot of survivability. I mean, he's King Arthur, so you're still going to have that going for you, but not as much safety as I think he'd like. And with 15 seconds left, I like the Scarabs getting aggressive, force the Leviathans to come into the Fire Giant pit.
But just be careful. Make sure you get your wards placed down and you cover your angles, because at the moment they're marching up and you can see where Paddy Tom's positioned towards this middle area. Anyone gets left at the back, they could be a focal point, and it will be Zap more than likely if they see him. But Paddy Tom should get spotted by layers. There is Wrong You being forced away for a second or two. Julio back in the fray again. Scarabs haven't started up this Fire Giant just yet. Paddy Tom's on CLA on cooldown for a moment or two there, as we now wait for the dance of the Fire Giant, which will begin here between the two. Oh, this is a crazy one now, because it is an even game at this stage. I mean, sure, there's 9k gold there, but you can see Scarabs are swinging in the later game now. I am interested, funny enough, Gore, at how much healing's been done this game by the Scarabs, and specifically Yamoja, mainly because there's not a ton of anti-heal on the side of Leviathan, so relying on Sobek, the Pestilence, and a little bit of a Divine Ruin to really get the healing off. But I do know Yamoja's sustaining those shields that come out are definitely helping them to sustain up in these fights a little bit more than Leviathans would like. And that anti-heal may come, lack of anti-heal, may come back to haunt them if they're not careful.
I'm starting to see what the Shuriken down there that's been built up. Yarkor looking for maybe a little bit of anti-heal, but like you said, not a lot. Pestilence tacked onto the end there for Wrong You, just kind of thrown in there. It feels like haphazardly at this point. It hasn't been a lot, and it hasn't necessarily been helping them.
Bobby's too far forward here. Bobby, why are we so far forward, Bobby?
They're on the
well, he's on Fire Giant. I guess good call, actually. Apologies. That was a great call from Bobby. Bait yourself, let your team get FG, and now we're going to take it to the Leviathans. Yarkor's under pressure, eats a lot of the damage with an Aegis there. I'm a monster pop by Shinto, though. He's looking for a shot. Who's it going to be on? Will he get time? No is the answer. Off the mark, Solo Troll gets towards Yarkor, but a good impale keeps him on the backline. Layers, though, got hold of Paddy Tom, and next up could be Julio, but Julio takes out Veronica, and he's still alive at the moment. How long is the question? Not long enough. Bobby gets the kill, and it's 4 for 3. Four members alive. And I think Scarabs have actually won this game. The power of friendship, the power of holding on for the late game, and making the enemy team make mistakes may have just been enough for the Scarabs to climb out of the coffin they were in and aim to end the game. They've got no minions, though. Are they that worried about these two? It is Yarkor and Shinto, though. They have to be respectful, Gore.
A lot of damage on the board, and you can see it, but look at how much they're able to do the Titan Hindu.
Oh, he should be going down relatively quick, and Scarabs have battled back. About 24 plus minutes of them being on the back foot and behind. They didn't win in terms of kills, but they did win in terms of the game. And that's going to take us to a game 3. You know, I don't know how you can go from game 1 where it's that much of a slaughterfest to a game 2 that is another slaughterfest to begin with, where you hold on and you trust in the fact you've got a late game and have one very good fight at that Phoenix line and turn the game around.
I had a lot of hope for this team coming into today because of what they were able to kind of showcase against the Dragons, and I think this is exactly why, right? It didn't go the way you would want in game number 1, but I think that reflects, even in game 2, like you said, I mean, 25 minutes of not winning it, and very drastically not winning it. I mean, like, you look at that, they got 2 kills across that 25 minutes. They did not have a gold lead. They were down by 5 plus gold, or K gold. Then they finally find that right-hand Phoenix defense. It was a lot to bet on, and at that point, it's a very, very scary position to be in, but the fact that they push back into it and find success afterward just showcases that they looked for those opportunities, like you said, looked for the late game, and now it gets me a little more excited to see what's going to happen in Game 3.
In fairness, I think a lot of people were like, hey, Scarabs beat Dragons, but was that a, you know, I mean, were they trolling or whatever? They just took a game off Leviathans. They were down a lot. This team, you got to respect, man. These are young guns that are coming up. After the break, we'll find out if they can take it to Leviathans again, or do Leviathans come out swinging one more time? We'll see you soon.
Welcome back, everybody. Another incredible game, of course, powered by Alienware, the entire SMITE Pro League, as well partnered and powered by that Alienware machine. These things are absolutely beasts, man. Let me tell you, you can get your hands on some of the great Alienware gear by heading over to smitegame.com/Alienware and using code SMITEAW. Thanks again to Alienware for partnering with us for Season 8 of the SMITE Pro League. Mifflin, Game 2, we think, is going to be easy. It looks like it could even be another perfect game, and Layers didn't get the first kill until pretty deep into that game. Not only was it not a perfect game for the Leviathans, but they end up losing this game too. What happened?
One flubbed Phoenix Siege attempt, immediately into a pick on a Yarkor, and then a Hail Mary Fire Giant. I mean, that's legitimately all that the Scarabs had to do that game. I mean, it's not often you get to say that the first 20 minutes of a match literally meant nothing, but the Scarabs only got proactive in a Hail Mary situation about 26, 27 minutes into the game, and then from there they were able to close it out off of one team fight. It's that old Zapman passive. It's what PK was able to do at Worlds. Zap brought him with him to the Scarabs.
It seems that way, man. You got to give this team credit. Their mental feels pretty near unshakable at this point. This is the first kill of the set for the Solar Scarabs. 20 minutes in. That is crazy. And then to go on to win this game, it just feels wild to me. I mean, the Scarabs just willing to stick with these teams. They are one team that you just cannot count out no matter how far behind they get.
And it's just one mistake is all it took. The Leviathans just flub one Phoenix Siege attempt, and from there, they were off balance. That's exactly the verbiage that Hinduman used during the cast, and I think it's completely apt there. It just felt like, to me, the Leviathans weren't ready for some fight back. I mean, can you blame them, though? 10,000 gold up, nearly undying in the entire set. All of a sudden now, having to defend your own Titan. That's a tough one for the Leviathans. Gonna have to clean it up on the Siege.
Layers with a fantastic game, finished at 5-5, but top of the player damage charts, 24,000 for him. Buronic clocking in at a clean 20k himself. Just impressive stuff from this Solar Scarab squad. Resilient, especially for a young team, to be able to come in and really just get blown out game 1, and then be getting blown out for the first 20 minutes of game 2. But then the Leviathans not able to seal the deal, and the Solar Scarabs sneak away with the victory and force the game 3. That's what this team, I mean, we talked about the Solar Scarabs team really being identified around their early game, and that is still the case. The games they win, it's usually pretty clean from the very beginning. But in games like this, I think that this is going to become their identity, is one that, yeah, they might have some bad games, but even when it's looking as bad as it could possibly get, you can't just assume the game is over, because they sure aren't.
Yeah, the Solar Scarabs are going to make you work and fight tooth and nail for every single inch of ground you're able to get against them. And this time around, they were able to fight back in and find a dub. We'll see in Game 3 how they adapt. Is it going to be more so towards that early game emphasis so they can start off on the right foot? Are they going to try and lean into this PK mentality of just asphyxiation style? You got to play perfect for 40 uninterrupted minutes if you want to beat us. So maybe they lean in towards that late game. I'm very excited to see where they go in the draft.
This is going to be fun, man. I mean, the Leviathans, I think, were likely having a lot of fun. You know, they didn't drop a kill in game 1. For the first 20 minutes, it was the same in game 2. Then comms start getting a little more quiet. People start getting a little more upset. And all of a sudden, you've lost. So now, I'd imagine they're locked in. And it's game time for game 3. So we're getting ready for picks and bans for it. Now, if you're the Leviathans, I think that you just got to think, what did we do so well game 1? How do we keep that ball rolling? How do we do what we did at the beginning of game 2, but maybe get a little bit better sieging capability than what we had?
Well, I don't even think the Leviathans need to shift up anything in P's and B's. I mean, 28 minutes of game 2. They were completely in control. They messed up one siege, and then that Fire Giant defense where they go back in, enhanced Fire Giant on 5 members of the Scarabs, and then they take that fight kind of disjointed. It's just two separate mistakes. It's all that they need to clean up on. I think that the drafts are fine. The Leviathans can go ahead and keep using the strategy they had used in game 1 and 2, and instead, all they have to adjust is the play on the field, or the shot calling. Make sure we're grouped up as 5. Let's make sure we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's. That's all they need to do to shift things up. If anyone's going to make adaptations inside P's and B's, I think it's going to be the Solar Scarabs.
I think you're right to put it that way, as their first adjustment is this Jing Wei ban by the Leviathans, keeping Zapman off of 2 picks now. The Heimdall has continued to be banned against him, and now that Jing Wei as well. Tiamat is still banned, as Solar Scarabs took 2 shots at Shinto's God Pool, and now 1 at Julio with that Kakulin ban. And that leaves Arthur as the lone, quote-unquote, top pick solo laner left on the table. Remember, the Scarabs went with Wukong in game 1, but I think that it might be the right call. But no, it's going to be Yamoja there for Rongyu this time around. And when Bobby looked as impactful on it as he did in those late game team fights, certainly the early game needed some work for the Yamoja, but the late game was great. Rongyu is the Yamoja specialist. I think it makes sense to give it to him.
But that does leave open the top pick that we've seen in the last couple of games of the Leviathan. So Solar Scarabs going to take it for themselves. Sobek locked in, and likely a shoe-in for that support role, but still definitely has the potential to flex into the solo lane. I like this draft so far from the Scarabs. I mean, I associate this Sobek pick more so with Bobby than I do the Emoji. It's going to allow him to play that aggressive style, should facilitate some early aggression, which is the Solar Scarabs at their best. And we know that Baronic is certainly capable of playing Merlin. But maybe that Solar Scarabs ban earlier on, back in game 2 towards this Raijin, wasn't just to make sure they weren't taking away, or not taking something away from themselves. It's targeted. Leviathans take it up 2nd overall.
Yeah, and A is going to be the pickup for Shinto here. Scylla did go 0-2 in this set, so I guess it makes sense for both teams to move away from her, but she lost both games so far, so just not going to worry about it this time around. As they get Arthur in that 3rd pick slot, feel like Julio is going to be pretty pleased with that, as check this out. It's a Willish, but it's not for Panatom. It's for Layers this time around. Not a whole lot of knockups on the other side, though. Yamoja does knock herself up with that Riptide. You can Gravity Surge off of that, but I'm looking at this Sobek pick for inbound being the main facilitator for this Willish.
This is a very early Awilish pick, but with support and solo locked in, that means that they don't have to worry about something like an Ardio with the Cripple Field or an Ares to target out this Awilish, so she shouldn't have to worry too much about counter matchups coming her way. It is maybe going to affect the Leviathan's choice inside of their Hunter. We might see him go towards something like the Hachiman or something along those lines so he doesn't have to worry about the leap, but this early Awilish pick is going to put a lot of pressure on the Leviathan's draft. And it's going to open up some doors for the Solar Scarabs to make sure they can wait a little bit longer on their own ADC. They can just wait it out, see where they want to go, or even strip away some of those better dash-centric hunters. Maybe they go towards the Hachiman themselves.
Could be the case. Hachiman, definitely a pick that we haven't seen a whole lot of as of late, but still feel like he's just kind of waiting in the wings for himself to have his time to shine.
Oh, nutty.
Are you... What?
I wrote the script this week. Yeah, I mean, that's free.
That is
Aggro,
actually unreal.
Look at the game
I'm be honest
state.
with you, bro. No, but I'm going to be honest with you. We haven't seen Hachiman all year. He hasn't exactly gotten insane buffs. I'm thinking, I'm just yes-anding you, bro. I thought there was no shot we saw Hachiman in this game, and you just flexed on me like that. All right, bro. All right.
Yep.
Do the rest. Who cares what I had to say? Influence the prophet.
Daji locked in. Shell nerfs means that she should be able to find that burst relatively easily, and not wanting to pick up a leap, it looks like it is going to be a Danzaburo hover on the side of the Leviathans. Does have some speed from the 3rd ability. The ability to box against the Hachiman is going to be incredibly strong because of the mitigations he gets inside of the auto attacks. But why am I talking about any of that? Chiron has been the premier dash-based hunter here in Season 8, and the Leviathans only play the meta. They're going to lock that one in, likely going to be the Transcendence Aussie build. I'm going to be very excited to watch this dual lane. Once supports rotate out, not often you get to talk about a Chiron-Hachiman matchup.
Yeah, that's going to be fun to watch for sure. Chiron definitely the new kid on the block, it feels like, in the meta. 5 games, 4 wins so far here in Season 8. As it's the tier, not for Julio. Normally when you see a tier and Julio's in the match, you got to assume it's going to him. That's a tried and true pick for him. But it's here for Solar Troll this time around. In Mifflin, I think it's pretty simple why we see this one. It's got a knockup.
It's got a knock-up, it's got sustain, it's going to be good front line, and just backline disruption on the side of their team. I like this draft a lot from the Solar Scarabs, but the question marks being this early Awilish pick needs to find pressure early on in the game, around level 6 where he hits his major power spike, so that's likely we're going to see layers start to get involved. How well is this tier going to be able to operate? Is it really something that SOT plays a lot? Not necessarily, but he should be able to utilize all of it to its best potential. I really am curious about these Hunters, though, man. This matchup could win or lose the game for either team.
Yeah, Hachiman definitely can be aggressive with that dash, but much shorter range than something like that giddy up there for Chiron. I think that we're going to see a lot of pressure on this duo lane potentially, because you think back to game 1 and how well the Leviathans played around that duo side. Why not go with that same sort of strategy? But Mifflin, I'm begging the Scarabs. Almost certainly Rongyu's going to get Benevolence level 1, and almost certainly Chiron's going to be the first one to hit level 2. I just want them to give up the wave pressure a little bit. Don't get killed level 2, please. That's all I'm asking.
And it's not hard to do. Hachiman's one of the safer Hunters in the game, right? He's one of those guys who wants to wait it out a little bit longer, get that ultimate available for the CC immunity. Back in Season 7, when it was the safe Hunter meta, it was Hachiman, Jingwei, and Heimdall just sitting inside their towers. So I'm sure that that's something that the Scarabs are going to be very adept at playing around. So as long as they are cognizant of that benevolent start and cognizant of the fact that Chiron's all-in engage at level 2 might be bar none the best of any Hunter in the game, I'm sure as long as they survive through that, they're going to have just a good time in lane.
I'm also looking at what Panatom's going to be able to do on this Dodgy. Really, really good draft for him. No CC immunity for Awilish or for Merlin, of course, and I feel like this is one of her best matchups in the jungle 1v1 because you're knock-up immune during the 1,000 cuts. Your second ability is Dodgy. No CC immunity whatsoever for Awilish. She kind of has to respect you at all times. I think Panatom might be set himself up for a really strong game.
He really could. I think that, if anything, we might see Layers go for an early Beads pickup. Last time around, all 5 members of the Solar Scarabs picked up Beads in that first Relic slot, but it's going to hamper his ability to be aggressive throughout the early game, which is one of the win conditions for the Scarabs. That blink loss on the jungle could really slow down the pace of their game, so going to have to keep an eye on the Relics on the sides of the Solar Scarabs, especially inside of their jungler, and see how he elects to play.
We'll say that the Leviathans, you think back to game 2 where it went wrong, that Phoenix siege on the offense, I think they're much better at sieging offensively with this draft in comparison to their last one.
They are. Just the healing, the dance around these objectives a little bit longer. The Leviathans have shored up their weaknesses.
Let's see if it's enough. The Scarabs looking to battle back and win game number 3.
I mean, battle back, I think they're on the forefront. I think the question really is going to be here, Gore, can Leviathans, have they got the mental to compete with the Solar Scarabs that will go to the end of the earth of losing and then still come back and win? Is that going to be the real question?
It's going to be a hard one for him to do, right? I mean, it's difficult. You were winning. You had the game. You were just one Phoenix away, potentially, from winning that one before it all slipped away from them. So definitely something that they're going to have to reconsider. It feels like they did reconsider. Rongyu on one of his strongest picks, Yarkor, back onto the Chiron that we saw have a phenomenal performance there in game number 1. It feels right. And the other thing I think is worth noting, in the top 3 bans for the Scarabs the last 2 games, Raijin was their 3rd ban each time. Now I finally get to see what Shinto is going to do with it, why it was banned out so often from him. It better have a good performance. It did warrant 2 bans from the Scarabs here. I really hope that it can live up to that.
Well, funny enough, I know the Des was talking a lot about the duo lane in this first wave, so we'll watch that first. But I'm a little bit concerned for Baronic this game a little bit. I feel like with Raijin and Darji, there might be some focus towards that flickering little Merlin in mid lane. So Baronic needs to be aware of that. Duo lane goes the way early of Leviathans. They do hit level 2 first, but look at the solo lane. Slight lead there for SOT at the moment against this King Arthur. And the bullying will begin in the respective lanes as the junglers are paired with the mid laners for the time being.
That's one of those things you would think, actually, now Layers is going in.
Oof! Beautiful from Layers, the blink, the feather step. As soon as he turns around, no, my friend, no escape for you. Knocked up in the air, and Shinto, well, he's not happy about that one, is he? No chance to beads, no chance to escape. First blood, Scarabs, and Layers is off to a good start.
That's a That's great. That's like the first time I feel like we've really gotten to see Layers kind of drive things forward for his team. I mean, last time he got that Hail Mary kill, right? The first kill they got in Game 2 was that, I'm going to die, but I'm going to take someone out with me. This time, it's feeling good, and this is a good composition for Layers to be successful. That's pre-ult online, but then you put inbound in there when he hits level 5, same thing for SOT. It's going to be really, really solid for them, and I'm excited to see what it can do. But, again, I have to give it with a grain of salt. Panatom on this Daji, who was already being played. Aggro had mentioned this, I think, in Game 1, maybe in Game 2. Right before the shell nerfs that had come through. Now with shell nerfs, Daji just feels better. So that's going to be good for Panatom on Yushinto on really good picks. And now they're forcing Zapman to make a really awkward choice.
Oh yeah, the Riptide backwards on the minions, keep the minions back, force Zapman out from the safety of his tower. Same time though, he is Hachiman, so he does have the ability to get in range, although knowing Zap, he's probably not put a single point in his first ability. Generally, he'll be maxing his second, first of all the banner, but then also the Aijutsu as well, the third ability, he likes to go after that too. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them abuse that situation just like that for the time being. The Riptide does connect, force the Aijutsu again, stun available. Will connect. No beads panic from Zap there, though. Realizes they won't have the damage to bring him down from that angle just yet. But you can see the work the Leviathans are doing once again towards that duo lane.
And I'm excited to see how they handle this because Hachiman, it was a big pick for Zapman last year, but he hasn't been picked up this year yet. This is the first time that he's come through, and it's weird to say this. Chiron got picked this year before Hachiman. That's something that I'm going to have to drill home for me because that is absolutely flabbergasting in my eyes. But Zapman, I mean, this was a very comfortable pick for him. Typically last year, I feel like if he didn't get Heimdall, he immediately went to Hachiman, so it definitely does feel like it is one of his top picks. And it's just going to be the question of how well it fits into this. Again, things like the On Her hadn't really been working out for him so far this year. And so I like the fact that he's going into a more Zapman style of play as opposed to playing whatever's the top of the meta just because he knows he's going to be able to make it work.
In fairness, I think Zap's done a good job, specifically last game, right, on the Jingwei. He knew he was going to get focused the same in Game 1, and instead he picked something safe and sat back, and he's doing the same thing here. May have to use his ultimate to escape this gank this time round. Will use the Aijutsu to stun Panitom. The dash-in comes afterwards from Daji, but the Riptide actually helped him out a little bit there, back to safety in case of damage, but Zap did use his ultimate too, so not the worst trade in the world there for Leviathans looking to pressure out the duo laner from the Solar Scarabs.
Keeps his beads, though. That's going to be good to help kind of thwart Daji and any kind of chance that she might have coming over for like a big ult gank. And maybe help sort out some of the setup that Rong Yu's been trying to throw down there. So he keeps himself survivable. I think, again, the duo lane has been very crucial. Game 1, it was the absolute bop that was the Leviathans and destroying what happened to Zapman at inbound. I mean, they were, what, 9 of 11 kills at one point? I mean, they were absolutely taking the brunt of the damage early on. Now seeing that pressure not only is getting alleviated, last game they tried to do it the same way for the Leviathans, but it didn't really work out the way they wanted it to. And Zapman can just keep this up. Just staying alive is a huge way to stop the Leviathans from controlling the game they did first time around. And now they're up about 1,000 gold. That's more than just your first blood bounty. Like, they are really controlling the pace of the game.
They're looking at the blue buff now, stealing that away, but Panitom coming in, looking to make a play if possible. Remember, no beads available for some of these characters. However, the ultimate did not connect with anyone, and Lawbringer used by SOT at the tail end there. The right idea from Panitom, though, realizing a lot of people have got Blink on that side, just didn't connect with him.
And a couple of, I should say, CC immune ults that are going to maybe save them, but if you can go 1 Daji ult for 2 to 3 ults on the side of the Scarabs, it's always going to be worthwhile. Unfortunately, there it's 1 for 1. SOT uses his. He doesn't throw out that many shots, but either way, I want to see that from Panatom. I think to keep this game, I don't want to use the term alive because they're not dead in it, but to keep it going and to try and pull things back into their favor, kind of make up this deficit of gold that they're already in. Now maybe even a little bit of damage the Scarabs are controlling early on. A lot of that pressure to me is going to be coming from the jungle and coming from Rong Yu. I mean, we've seen his highlight reel literally at the beginning of this set. If you can remember that far back, it was Yamoja, and there was a good reason for it. I think this is going to be something that they're going to have to figure out how to deal with. So far, been a good job from the Scarabs. They haven't necessarily had to deal with it, though. Now that he's level 5, he's kind of getting more involved in the mid lane. I think we're about to see a lot more of Rong Yu.
Credit where it's due as well. I did expect the mid lane from Scarabs, but it may struggle a little bit this game. But that first blood in favor of Layers there. Really relieved any sort of pressure I may have expected out of jungle mid-com positions. And it's kind of slowed, taken the sting out of Leviathans so far early. And actually, though, Leviathans getting aggressive on the backs coming out from the Scarabs. They know Layers' base, but they can't find a pick just yet. Blue buff going to be about another minute on spawning on Scarab's side of the jungle here. And you can see SOT just has a slight lead at the moment over Julio on this right-hand side. Nothing to really write home about, but at least a lead is a lead.
Yeah, a lead is a lead, and that's all that matters, right? At the end of the day, they're ahead by enough. And admittedly, small leads like this, these are the ones that I think are the best because everybody has, like, what, 50 to 100 gold more? It's enough to get a couple of wards. It's enough to get some vision. We've been talking a lot about wards in the early game, and it helped the Leviathans out a ton. I think this is a good position for the Scarabs to spend a little bit of their money onto that and try to continue being aggressive, try to find maybe a couple more invades, but realistically good spots for Layers to get aggressive, maybe knock some people up, pull them into the gravity surge, and find some kills.
Could see a fight on this middle area here, but Bobby just recognized he could have been in danger there, so jumps back to safety of his team. Left-hand side, we mentioned wards, and just keep an eye on that ward coverage for the Scarabs there. A lot of vision at the moment there for Zapman, just trying to keep eyes on these rotations coming in. Speaking of rotations, here comes Panitom now. Chop Suey begins. Zapman, he jutsus the weird direction, but he does have backup coming. He might be able to get hold of Panitom. Hold that fort, though. Paolo comes into play. The up-down, but Zap's still alive until the walls crush down. And meanwhile in the jungle, Shinto got hold of Baronic, but he will pay the price against Layers here. One more basic will do it. Didn't ended up needing Suku at all. Not sure if I get 10 out aggro there. Layers a bit too much from that. And luckily enough, nothing more comes of that. 2 for 1 in favor of Leviathans there. Although Baronic and Zapman both dying for Shinto, I'm kind of okay, I guess, if I'm Leviathans at this stage, especially if they get this purple buff.
If they're able to get a little bit of an invade, it's going to be good for them. Looks like Bobby's going to be the one who scoops that one up. So he manages to keep it, even if it's not exactly where you'd want it to go, right? But the big thing, I think, is more or less the experience that's going to go that way.
Yeah.
In fact, Inbound's just slightly behind for Rong Yu. He's level 6 right now to the level 7 of Rong Yu. So let's call it half a level, depending on when he ticks up. But a little bit of experience, especially just stripping that away from the Leviathans, is going to be helpful for them. This has been a really good set of plays from them, but you can definitely see where some of the, I want to say just lacking nature, specifically in mid, like Baronic, you had mentioned, is probably going to suffer. He was down a little bit of experience earlier, is now on par, level 10 to 10. But he's not going to have the same bang that you're going to get to see out of a Raijin, right? The big burst, the big kind of amount of damage that Raijin's going to give in the immediate fight, I think is going to favor the Leviathans. But if Baronic can survive a little bit longer, the damage over time that he does, all of those dots in his kit, the full kit just does so much. And that's going to help out against Inbound, or sorry, Rong Yu and Julio.
Under a bit of pressure here, has to use Suku, thinks about jumping over the wall, fakes it out and kills Panitom. Great support from Bobby, but he jumps right in towards Julio, who misses the ultimate. The first step buys him a moment. Great fearless from Solo Control 2, but Julio has none of that. He will slice away Layers' life just in time, and then the walls come crashing down from Rong Yu, and it could be Bobby under some pressure, who jumps away from Shinto just in time that Thunder Crash. Meanwhile, left-hand side, Hachiman taking on Kyron for a second. Looks like that'll come to nothing there. But 1 for 1 again, jungler for jungler. Good work from Layers, good work from Panitom, or more likely the rest of Leviathans there to keep this even. Still, a 1k gold lead, give or take, for Scarabs.
A lot of pressure is going to be coming down. The Scorpions being burned off the map already means that immediately my eyes, especially 10 minutes in, they start to drift towards that Gold Fury and where and which team is going to be able to get the pressure to take that first. Again, Burn is probably stronger here for the Scarabs. In fact, I argue that most objective fights are stronger for the Scarabs now, only because Shinto, yeah, good amounts of bursts that you can have from Raijin. None of it's what we typically call a secure, like not the same way with a Kukulkan and so.
Hold that foot. Yoko having a fight at the same time as Panitom too. Panitom going to jump to his teammate. Can't land that Paolo onto his prime target Layers. And Zapman had the beads up, and now it's Rong Yu in danger. The Riptide ended up costing him his own life there, unfortunately. And as you said, a good kill as the Raijin ultimate still available for Shinto, though. As Leviathans fall back, Scarabs can't find more out of that, but it was a good play from them considering how far up Leviathans were.
It's one of those moments, if SOT had rotated over, which is going to be, again, hindsight 2020, right? If he's over there, that's an easy Gold Fury for them because they get that kill on the Rong Yu. I feel like there's a little less opportunity for the Leviathans to fight back. But there's not really a reason to risk it this early on either. They're in a very good, comfortable lead, right? Nothing necessarily large, but enough that they can feel confident in their capabilities this early game. And this is starting to feel a little more like what we saw versus the Dragons, right? Last game, it was a really good comeback. Game number 1, Scarabs were kind of just wet paper and the Leviathans punched through it. This time around, this is the team that is controlling what they're doing and proactively making plays.
Goon Squad Scarabs coming in. Paniton forced back under the tier 2. Still going in solo on Troll. And Baronic will get credit with that arcane stance. But Wrong U's arrived. The walls come down. But where is his teammate? Where is the backup? At the moment, it's really just King Arthur watching on. But the damage is good. And oh my god, Wrong you insane man. Mountain double kill for the support. And in comes Shinto to clean up potentially Bobby here too, who has to try and escape this left-hand side now. But he's running into enemy territory. He's not going to get away easy from the combination of these Leviathans too. I didn't think there was enough damage there for them to die, but holy moly, what great work out of Julio and Wrong You combined.
Yeah, just the CC, the control they come through, and I was kind of wondering what we were going to see out of this game. It seems like we're in for a show. I'm going to go ahead and sit back. I think this one's going to last a little while if it keeps going back and forth like this. Good play, though, from Wrong You. Lockdown, on point, same thing like you said for Julio. What felt like great dive for the Scarabs, a lot of proactive play, good decision-making. Maybe goes a little too far there on the right-hand side of the map. That fight stays in the jungle, just fine. Once it cracks that tier 2 line, that's where things start to get a little more iffy for them, and I think that's where things came out of place for them. The walls not exactly favoring their position or their retreat a little bit more. And now Hindu, I mean, we've been talking about a lot of a lead for the Scarabs.
Zap's in trouble though, Gore again. He's not got beats, he's not got Aegis, he's not got a life. Your core credit with a kill as the rotation comes in. It's the first time I felt the wall coverage is slightly slacked on that left-hand side for a second, and Leviathans punish it straight away. And should be able to get a tier 1 tower here too. Could even start to look towards a Gold Fury as well if they so choose. But as you said, you know, that River's Rebuke from Wrong You, Gore, that was the be-all and end-all of that fight on the right, and it's given Leviathans a lead in this game now, especially if they do look at this Gold Fury.
This is going to be a really big pickup for them. Being able to get this gold, the lead's already been dissipated. I don't know, again, it's so awkward at this point because you don't have the same secure, right? You don't have that same big burst mage ability that's just going to scream objective killer. And so do you get aggressive? Like, how willing are you to sit on this fire giant, or sorry, this Gold Fury and try to pull the lead in your favor? I think it's still currently, in the state of the map, favoring the Leviathans being able to pick it up, but it's nowhere near the amount of control they need to confidently do it. In fact, Julio, if he's not careful, if he gets baited into a fight here, yeah, there's 4 members of the Scarabs waiting for him. It looks like it could be a pretty easy, clean pickup for a Pyromancer.
Julio, though, spotted it out, had some... I'm not sure if he had wall placement down and just saw the vision through the jungle there to make sure they were not going to be able to do that uncontested. It forced everybody on Scarabs back again. Checking him with the dual lane, Yorkor level 14 to Zap's 13, but he has got a couple of minions left there, so not too far behind at the moment. Executioner online for Zap. But you can start to see the difference now between the ability base. Oh my goodness me, stop giving Wrong You your mojo. This isn't fair, but Zap's usage of the ultimate there, very, very good. His Aegis is early, and that means there's a chance for Yorkor to let the snipes. He won't, but Wrong You might be able to find the kill with the bubbles, and will do so. Yamoja is on a killing spree. Good news, though, for Scarabs. They will at least try and push on the right-hand side and take a Pyro, but Gore, Leviathans are starting the Gold Fury.
And that's going to be a big swing for them. That Pyromancer kind of keeps things even, but that's before this Fury has gone down. This is where the true jump is going to make you up there to 1,800 gold. Feels really good in the pockets of the Leviathans. But I will say, the Scarabs haven't necessarily slipped out of this fight just yet. They definitely lost the control they had early on, but a lot of the focus has been on the Zetman. I mean, look, 3 of the 8 kills that the Leviathans have are on the Zap, so just slightly under half there. And there's a good opportunity, I think, for layers, especially with SOT joining the fight on this tier, as well as Inbound being in there a little bit more often, to start to become the jungler we need right now, if you're a Scarabs fan, right? Someone who's going to be able to find a lot of these kills. He's got 2 levels up on Panatom. The damage is going to be there. It's just the setup that is necessary. And right now, they haven't been in the same place as the Leviathans enough to find any kind of counter. A lot of those fights have been happening towards Zap. They're keeping layers out of it, and it feels like it's intentional.
SOT's in a bit of trouble here because Rongyu's rotating over. At the same time, I was looking at a gang on the left-hand side, but it's SOT under pressure first. Still has Lawbringer, though, so no super panic yet, and uses the beads and the ultimate. He'll be back to safety. His tower should stay standing. Not many minions left, however. I was going to say, Go, I'm surprised I've not seen any attention towards your core this set so far. Oh, Paddy Tom! Okay, calm down, relax. Blink was used there. But yeah, I'm surprised we don't see too much focus on your core, but as I say that, we can see Bobby and Layers both hanging around this area, but your core nowhere to be seen for the time being, probably realizing, hey, if we've got pressure on the right, where is everybody from Scarabs? Probably on the left.
Yeah, very happily over here taking a tower. Again, just a little bit amount of gold. Rongyu, this rotation though, could be big. Either isolating Bobby or getting an ult onto these members of the Scarabs. It's either way going to create a big opportunity for the Leviathans.
He took a lot of damage more than Boggy, but Zapman's also low thanks to the damage out from your core there as well. He used the ultimate. But everyone will limp away back to safety. There just wasn't enough chase, I think. I don't think Panatom was in position, and I don't think Shito was too comfortable diving on in as Raijin on his own. So Solar Scarabs managed to get away, but they do get a tier 1 tower there, which continues to close the gold gap that Leviathans have found themselves now after that Gold Fury and the last few minutes of play. Still anyone's game, this one, and I guess when we turn attention a little bit more towards the later stages of the game, Gore, how do you feel about who's got more of an advantage? I mean, we saw, you know, Yamoja last game making a big impact, this game having a good impact too. Are you leaning that way? Or do you reckon the Scarabs have got what it takes with their composition?
I think on frontline, like, this is where things get really weird. King Arthur Yamoja, to me, is a little better, like, just very slightly better than Tyr Sobek. I think the displacement and control that Tyr Sobek bring, though, is definitely going to be unmeasured. It's the healing from Rongyu that is going to be very problematic. So I want to watch those items. Actually, Contagion just picked up there for inbound, so perfect timing. Divine Ruin locked in as well for Baronic. So they seem to kind of recognize where a lot of those problems were, and we had highlighted that last game that it wasn't necessarily coming through against inbound. So I like the fact that they're going that way, which makes me a lot more hopeful for the Scarabs. And then when it comes down to it, like, I like the Chiron a little more than the Hachiman, but I think a Wheelish is going to beat out the Daji, and honestly, if Baronic is able to just continue good amounts of damage, which, scanning the charts for him, he's about middle of the pack right now, just a little bit, like 100, 200 gold or damage behind Shinto. I think this is going to be a good spot for the Scarabs. I think the Leviathans have a slightly more favorable draft, but the execution so far and the style of play from the Scarabs, I think they can hold out for a late game win once again. It's going to be very difficult for them, but I do think that they're going to be able to try and eke one out.
Well, I was going to look at Solar Troll's build there. He's got picked up a Witchblade, which I do like. It's got more physical protections for you, but also will shut down a bit of what Hachiman's going to bring to the late stages if he was on their team. But mainly, look at the auto attacks really on the other side. I mean, your core's auto attacks are going to be a little bit more lackluster, is the way I can say. Very ability-based focus. So I would lean Hachi over the likes of Chiron early, but as you said, Panitom could be under a bit of pressure, maybe, or like rather it's Layers being chased out by Rongyu again. I love Rongyu's play though. He's just not scared to step up on this Yamoja and just force people back.
And this is one of those moves, that Witchblade affecting Panatom and Yarkor, right? Like going in Daji, the biggest thing, like when you're looking at it. Also, a beautiful item. If you're looking for something to kind of be your quote-unquote replacement for Shell, nothing's going to replace block stacks, but you could slow down their attack speed a little bit. It's definitely going to help you out. Maybe just nullifying things like an enhanced purple buff, but I really do like this, again, style of play for SOT, who knows he's going to be up in their face. That's not necessarily to save him. He's going to have some other items that are to save him. That's where your Spectrals come online a little later, things like that. That is to make sure that Baronic and Zap and Layers get hit just slightly less, right? It is going to help the backline out a little bit more with the range that it has. So I'm really excited to watch what he's able to do. Plus, this is very adjacent to, I think, a tier build that we saw last year, very movement speed heavy. Things like Relic Dagger were in there, very health-based. I think this is something that is going to fit pretty well for SOT. It should open up a lot of opportunities, and it looks like he's going to be able to create a little bit of space for the Scarabs as fights go on.
Primal Fury taken at the same time as the Pyro almost instantaneously, but that definitely leans in favor of Leviathans once more, especially when you turn your attention towards the Fire Giant, you know? That Primal Fury does give your team a buff to help bring it down a little bit quicker and take a little bit less damage too, which will factor in if this one goes later on, and it looks like that might be the case too. Checking in with builds, though, I do see that Inbound did hit level 12 and did go for that cursed Onk. We were talking about anti-heal, and this could really throw Leviathans for a loop if they don't play around it well. But Panitum in mid going aggressive, snipes out too, looking at Baronic. Aegis already used and the beads too. No change really connecting with anyone there from Panitum to make a difference, but he will dive down and pick up Baronic anyway, who was under his tier 1 tower. Reinforcements from Scarabs a little bit late, but look at Julio Gore. He's wrapping round the back, and he comes looking for a play, and he'll pick up and slam down Layers, but Layers still alive with the Aegis and leaps away. Not far enough though. Shinto credited with a kill, but once again it was the walls from Rongu. The River's Rebuke came up big, and now Inbound's running for his life one more time. The dot damage will not be enough. It forced SOT in though to the fight to try and help out his team or maybe get a kill, and it won't be enough either. He's forced a Lawbringer away, and that's a tier 2 if I've ever seen one, or maybe a Fire Giant.
They're going to be running it right back to where they know. Look, 3 people dead, 15 seconds before Baronic's back. SOT, no ult. Inbound, no ult. And both of their blinks down. There's no way someone's going to get into this. Well, at least not the easy way, right? You could try to run it straight down at the FG. And SOT looks like he might be going for that path. Gets caught out there by Julio. It's one of those easy calls, it feels like, here for the Leviathans. 21 minutes in, good control. And I feel like it's just so difficult, this Yamoja. They weren't first picking it. I think that's something that the Scarabs kind of recognized and were trying to hedge their bets on in bans and picks and bans. Sobek was their first pick both times in a row. Yamoja is a huge pick for Rongyu. Now they first pick it, and we're seeing the impact and why Rongyu has been just kind of regarded as one of these incredibly strong frontliners, as well as the impact that he's really been able to bring here, specifically on picks like this Yamoja. Showcasing why it's been a little bit of a top ban against the Leviathans as well. I mean, it creates so much space and disrupts so much in the middle of the fight there in the tier 2 for the Scarabs that there weren't a lot of opportunities for them to fight back because they were trying to figure out where was safe to begin with. So they have to figure out maybe a way to try and either burn Rongyu down or force his ult out in a safe position so they can get out of there and come back in. It's one of those weird times I feel myself kind of wanting for a Phantom just to try and walk through those walls, even though admittedly all of their relic choices already are a little bit stronger. Maybe you could trade it out for something like that Cursed Onk, but I don't even know if I like that choice, so I definitely think that they don't like that choice. And so it's just going to be something they have to adapt to and learn to deal with.
Well, let's see what Leviathans adapt to this time round, because last time they were in sieges, it kind of became a calamity for them where Scarabs ended up taking the game. And Scarabs have been in this spot before. All 3 Phoenixes still alive for the time being, though. Late backs from Lasers, late backs from SOT. And there might be a window for Leviathans to get aggressive here. They've just got to wait for those minions. And that Phoenix is going to go down quick. Panitum already with the Powwow, looking at Zapman. Zapman had beads, but uses his ult defensively. And immediately Leviathans turn tail. The damage done, heading towards this middle lane next. I'm really interested about how these engagements go, because I do feel Leviathans with Panitum, he's going to be the aggressor Gore in these engagements. He has to jump on in, use that Powwow and try and force the Scarabs back to safety, giving that room for Leviathans to do the damage and have the follow-up.
His worst case scenario is doesn't hit anybody, but most scenarios Panitum's going to go in and he's either forcing an ult or some beads. Either way, he's getting some form of CC immunity away from the Scarabs, which opens up a lot of opportunity for everybody else on the Leviathans. And right now it's kind of due diligence, right? Go in, knock down all the towers that you can. They've already got that left-hand Phoenix. This is putting them more or less in the same win state they were in Game 2, which, again, things get a little awkward around this point of the game. Holding on a little bit longer. We haven't got to see a lot of Layers. He got that first blood, it hit him his 250th career kill, which is really good for him. And then he got 2, and then he got 3, and then he stopped being impactful in the game for about the last, 15 minutes? Like, we haven't really gotten to see a lot out of this Wheelish pick, except the early game. And I'd like to see some more of that, but the synergy that you kind of see built into the team hasn't been happening. We haven't seen a lot of SOT or Inbound getting the plucks and aggressive to really set up Layers. And I feel like that's the slowdown that really so far has hurt the Scarabs. If he can turn that around, plus if Zapman can have the same turnaround that he had on Jingwei in Game 2, they're not out of this, but they are going to be looking towards these later defenses. They're still proactive, looking for things like a Fury, but I don't know if they can fight 5-on-5 as confidently if Rongyu is in the area.
Now, I think there's a lot of war coverage on the left-hand side, so I do know the Leviathans are aware that the Scarabs are at that Gold Fury, but can they get back in time to defend now is the question. Because all 5 Leviathans are here on the right, and they are sieging the Phoenix. And Scarabs may have bitten off more than they could chew there by sending so many, just in case they are engaged on a Gold Fury. Those wards on the left were so important. They're all sentries too, from what I can tell, the Leviathans placed down there, so they had full vision in that area of the Scarabs coming in, and that is going to cost the Scarabs a Phoenix in trade for some gold, which they do need, but now it makes this defense even harder. I'm not going to count them out though, Gore, because let's be honest, after last game, there's always a shot, and Scarabs may have it, especially now that Zap's pretty much full build at this point. Needs that level 20 though to get that Gilded Arrow upgraded. But here we go. What's the defense going to look like?
A lot of it I actually think is going to be offense. I think Rongyu has a lot of good setup, but inbound, again, a good pluck from him or a good blink Fearless coming down from Solo or Troll. That's going to pull somebody out of position on the Leviathans. And if it's, you know, Julio, maybe it's a Rongyu, they might walk out alive. If you're lucky, they die off, and the Scarabs are definitely in a good position to continue a fight afterward. But if you're really unlucky, Panatom, Shinto, Yarkor, either of them getting picked up, makes it a lot easier for the Scarabs to pull something amazing off here. It's only 8,000 gold, Hindu. Like, 26 minutes in, it's still a lot. They haven't finished off builds. It's not the same case as it was last game where it was 9K, but everybody's builds were full. Everybody had power pots and upgraded relics, so it wasn't really that big of a deal. It's still going to be impactful for the Scarabs. They're still going to feel that difference, but they're not out of this one. I think that they might have to give up a Fire Giant. They might be able to get aggressive here. This one's a tough call. With 2 Phoenixes down, you're probably better off defending. But I do still think that as long as things can happen on their turf under one of their Phoenixes, if they can get them both respawn, the Leviathans are going to have to play too cautious to end the game.
We saw them group up with that middle Phoenix. Instead, Leviathans fell back, bought up, coming back to the Fire Giant. As you said, looks like Scarabs will set on the back foot here for a while. Zap's done a good job on the left-hand side, clearing out those final minions. Has hit level 20 now, but with that klaxon sound of the Fire Giant falling, everybody will be returning back to the fountain from Scarabs, ready to defend once more. And if you're Leviathans, you're going middle Phoenix first and then left if you really need to. Needs to buy some time. Zap's still in left though right now, and they know they can see the minions there. So what's going to happen in this middle lane? Without him being here, what happens? Bobby forced back for a second into the fountain room. Come Leviathans. Middle Phoenix down to half. Zap turns into the fray, but Bobby's already used the lurk in the waters defensively, and the middle Phoenix falls. Panatom now looking for some snipes and gets one on layers, but he's got a Magi's to keep him topped up. Solo Troll being run down and has to Lawbringer away too, but all these ults are being used defensively, and in the end Layers is going to fall. They can get the left hand Phoenix if they want to, or they can drop the River's Rebuke one more time and send the Scarab scattering again. No real focus on the Titan though, which is a bit of a concern in the situation, and Bobby tries to step up, eats some more damage, ends up dying to Shinto, and next up could be the Titans once they've killed off Zatman, but Zat will survive. Titan still stand him. The end of the game is brutally long and painful and arduous for Scarabs, but Leviathans are going to come out on top of this, 2-1. But my oh my, I'll give credit where it's due for Scarabs battling back in this set against Leviathans and showing they deserve to be in the league. But Leviathans, consistent is the best way I can put it. I think they slipped up in game 2, and that game goal was a hard fight for him, but they still found the win.
I think it's, game 2 is a little slip up from Leviathans, a good set of plays coming out from the Scarabs. There's a couple of good plays early on here for the Scarabs, but like you said, consistency was the key, and that was just exactly what the Leviathans brought. I mean, throughout that entire game, you could pretty much rely on everything going right for them. They were making the right decisions, right engagements, right ult choices, and unfortunately for the Scarabs, there wasn't a lot of play. Like, Layers unfortunately kind of disappeared to the wayside after the first few minutes, and that's where things started to crumble.
Well, what do you know? Your Mojo's pretty good, it seems. Expect to see more in your games one more time. For now, though, we're going to go to a quick break, and after the break, we've still got one more set to bring you, and the group draw 2. A lot of action still to come today. We'll be back after the break.
Welcome back, everybody, to the SMITE Pro League, which is, of course, powered by Alienware here in Season 8. You can head on over to smitegame.com/Alienware and use code SMITEAW to get in on the best deals Alienware has to offer so that you, too, can play just like a SMITE Pro League professional player. And Mifflin, if it's anything like the level that we just saw from both the Leviathans and the Scarabs, that's going to be a pretty high level of gameplay because that's what we saw here in game number 3. A close back-and-forth match that I will sum up with just one player's name, and that was Wrong.
I was going to do it.
He was the difference.
That was going to be my call, Aggro. I wanted to talk about Wrong and you know what? You can't stop me, man. This guy was playing out of his mind. Not only was he facilitating these engagements, like as you saw at the beginning of this clip, by starting it off with a phenomenal ultimate, but also chain CC on point, sustain, incredibly good. And it's not often that Yamojo is able to play that goaltender role, that zoning role around neutral objectives, but Rongyu was maintaining pressure and maintaining distance for his team the entirety of this match.
He played so well, man. He was just absolutely making the difference in these team fights. Panatom, despite how much I love the Dodgy pick, didn't look super great on it for some parts of this game. Did find his moments a little bit later on, but I think it's fair to say he struggled early. Got to give a lot of credit to the Scarabs, man. After the beating they took in Game 1, to turn around, win Game 2, and then look this good for Game 3 is pretty impressive from this team. I think we're clearly seeing the growth of this young squad.
Yeah, it's not often that a team looks legitimately better every single match of a set. Game 1, completely blown out. Game 2, miraculous comeback. Game 3, contested match. If the Solar Scarabs stay on this trajectory, if they stay improving at the rate that they have been, due in large part to the veteran leadership of Zapman, these guys are going to very quickly become a threat within the league.
I think that's very fair to say as we get prepared for these groups. Remember, after SPL today, we're doing a live draft show where these teams are going to be grouped together for the rest of Phase 1. The Scarabs are a team that maybe once would have been thought of as an easy pick to go into someone else's group and struggle. No longer, man. This team is looking like they are fearsome competitors. And of course, with the win, the Leviathans lock up that first overall seed. So it will be the Leviathans and the Jade Dragons drafting the two groups. Again, that is happening right after our final set of the day, which is coming up pretty shortly here between the Bolts and the Tartarus Titans. Should be a pretty good one to close out this round robin stage of phase number 1. But Miff, let's look at the Leviathans as we start thinking about what they're going to do in these group stages. I think that this is the team to beat right now in the SPL, especially when Rongyu's playing the way he did today.
The Leviathans are just incredibly consistent. They've got not a one-note style. Back in Season 7, once they were going by the name Sanguine, you could say that, yeah, they were that one trick. We're going to wait for 25 minutes and then group up and team fight better. But now they've got a predictable style. They're going to play whatever is considered to be the best inside the SPL, inside ranked. If Reddit's talking about a god, you better believe that they're going to be playing it. But it hasn't been easy to deal with, even though you know what's coming, even though you know it's going to be Rongyu playing the Yamirs and the Yamojas. You can't stop it, because they play at such a high level, and it's a treat to watch. It's almost as if every single week the Leviathans are daring their opposition to deal with it, and so far, only one team has been able to.
Pretty tough to do at this point, especially when they're playing as well as they are as a unit. A big part of the Leviathans team is their rookie solo laner, Julio, and he's standing by right now with Hinduman for the post-game interview.
Yes, I'm joined now by Julio. Julio, congratulations, first of all, on taking number 1 in the split. Did you expect that after, the intro to the season?
I mean, obviously, I joined the team to win everything, and being first seed was one of the, objectives. So I'm pretty happy that we made it first.
That's awesome to hear. I mean, a couple of questions for you. First of all, I need to know one thing, right? This is slightly off subject, but it kind of bothered me all day, right? What's in the backpack behind you? Because, I've just seen it all day, and I'm like, I wonder what's in the backpack.
I'm not sure I can say it on stream.
Oh, it's one of those things. Okay, yeah, maybe not for streaming.
Yeah.
Next question, really. Group draws tonight, right? Who do you want in your group? Is there someone you want to, smack in the solo lane? Who do you want to face? Is there somebody you want? Or are you scared of anyone? What do you want for your group?
I mean, to be honest, I don't care. Obviously, we've been talking for, who we're gonna pick and whatever. We haven't decided yet. I mean, I don't know. I guess I want to play against Nika again, you know, because he sold me and I kind of look bad against him. So, you know, we'll see.
Oh,
Maybe
we could
we
save that for
pick Only
playoffs, though, you
Warriors.
know? We could save that for playoffs, you know? It doesn't have to be
Yeah,
in the
we
groups,
could. We could
maybe.
as well.
Turn attention real quick to that Scarab set, though, because, like, game one, very, very dominant. I think you're all having fun. I'm pretty sure I saw Shinto eating lunch at the same time, just so you know, while he was playing that game. But game two, different story. You guys had a very good lead, and then all of a sudden, something went wrong at that Phoenix. Can you talk us through exactly what went wrong in your minds?
Pretty sure Yarkor got picked up by the Yemoja portal, and he got like really poked. And whenever he got out, and then I ulted Jin Wei on Shinto Silla ult, and that was pretty bad as well. But then we could have won the game after that goal, but we trolled as well, and then they did fire. So I don't know. It was kind of sloppy, but we could wrap it up in the third game.
Yeah, I'm glad you did manage to wrap it up anyway. Well, I'm going to let you go and get yourself prepared for this evening's entertainment with the group's draw. I guess one question for you, though. Kings or Titans? Who do you think is going to win this next set?
Pretty sure Kings.
Oh, okay. Stick with the EU boys. Look after yourself, Julio. Great talking to you. We're going to go to a break. You guys are going to listen to some terrible music and also see a wait timer. Maybe you want to sub with Prime. I'm just selling out today. I'll see you later.
Bye.